Hello and welcome to the Silverstone 500, a 3-hour race in which teams compete for the prestigious 1932 RAC trophy, and this year it forms the second round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. It's the 10th year of this blue ribbon British GT race, and as the longest race of the season, it brings a different kind of challenge for the drivers and strategy for the teams to overcome. The first race of the season at Brands Hatch had its fair share of drama as well. Let's take a look back at the story of the season opener. And after a safety car start, we are about to get to racing speed with Andrew Howard in Beachley Aston Martin at the head of the field, and we are racing in 2021. Andrew Howard leads them into Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. Lamborghini goes to the front. WPI Motorsport then leading the way. On the inside line looks Chris Salkeld then in Harriet's Chariot, and he gets into the side of the Toyota. Off goes John Ferguson backwards into the gravel trap.
There is James Cottingham. So he's on the back of Adam Ballon. Ian Logie still there in 8th place. Cottingham again lines up for the inside line. Oh, so close. God, James, is he going to commit? There's contact and around they both go! Both into the gravel as we go safety car for the second time.
Look at Michael Igo go. This is the advantage of having a GT4 car between you and the rest of the GT3s. Side by side for third here. Now Richard Neary is keen to get onto the podium. He's alongside Andrew Howard into clearways, tries to go around the outside. You can't do that, Richard. Kelvin Fletcher is rubbing his hands with glee here as well, sensing an opportunity to take advantage. What a move from Richard Neary. He can't stop the car though. He's briefly into third place. Howard fights back. Richard Neary this time makes the mistake, runs onto the grass. He's still not back on the road, and they're almost at clearways. And Kelvin Fletcher now just powers straight past him into the final corner.
The leader is in, look in the background. So there is Michael Igo. Michael Idun into the pit lane. Leah Bachitsky is in, Andrew Howard is in. So 1, 2 and 3. A slow stop seemingly from the Bachitsky Lind Lamborghini, because that has lost a place to Logie and Berman.
Meanwhile in GT4 land things are getting entertaining. That is the Ginetta, which has now been taken over of course by Charlie Robertson. Don't hit each other, be careful through Paddock Hill Bend. You can go side by side through here. Bit of curb hopping there from Gordon Colebrook, and Burton does go through.
Fights back on for third. Dennis Lynn thinks, right, let's have another go at this. Now he's going to push and see whether he can make use of the traffic.
And he's right in the way of Yelmer Berman, and Lindy's up the inside now, 3 abreast into Westfield Corner, and finally, after half an hour of trying...
For Assetto Motorsport's British GT debut, this is quite an effort, looking as though it could be on for a maiden victory.
That is the GT4 leader, Charlie Robertson in the pit lane with a left rear puncture.
Absolutely right. So how much time is this going to lose them? How much did they have in hand? Well, they've lost the lead already. Now the car's got to be dropped down. Come on, chat. Suddenly it all becomes a panic. Is everything right? Is it tightened up? Go, go, go. It is going to be a second British GT win for Michael Igo. It's going to be an 18th for Phil Keane. He's going to be 2 clear of Johnny Adam now, because honours in the opening round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship go to Phil Keane and Michael Igo. Second, Johnny Adam and Andrew Howard just ahead by 0.3 of a second. Now, what about GT4?
Gus Burton is going to bring the 57 car home, a race winner in GT4. Gus Burton and Will Burns win the opening round of the British GT4 Championship, and it was an absolute thriller. In GT3, Brands Hatch winners Michael Igo and Phil Keane in the WPI Lamborghini Huracan carry the maximum time penalty for their success in the season opener. But that won't faze Phil Keane. In fact, not much does.
I think the success penalty hurts you a lot here, especially with the 20 seconds in the last hour. But there's also a lot to play for in strategy and everything else because of the 3-hour safety cars, and so we'll see what we can do.
Ex-British touring car driver Hunter Abbott makes his British GT return in 2C's Motorsport's new Mercedes AMG GT3, and he's been looking fast right off the bat.
Yeah, so at the moment it's just the one-off. So it's been a little bit of time since I've been in a car. A couple of years since I racing regularly, and then last year just did one race. So it'd be nice. It's nice to get back out. It's brilliant, actually.
Hunter last raced with us in 2016, but is arguably best remembered for his first year in the championship in 2008, a debut that turned out to be a baptism of fire, quite literally.
Yeah, I was with Rob Austin Racing, and yeah, me and Rob were together sharing a Ginetta, and got involved with another car and ended up going over the barriers and multiple barrel rolls and a bit of a fireball at the end. So yeah, it was definitely quite a shock at the time, and yeah, thankfully that's a long time ago now.
In GT4, it was a dream start to the season for Century Motorsport, with Will Burns and Gus Burton leading their sister car home for a 1-2 finish. As a result, though, they'll be carrying the biggest success penalties into this race, which could leave the door open for the team who were cruelly denied a dream debut victory last time out, Assetto Motorsport.
This race tends to favour the Pro-Am lineups as well, with the success penalties at the pit stops for the silver cars as well at every stop. And obviously then the cars that did well at Brands will also have the extra penalty at the last stop. So I think if we can play our cards right, stay out of trouble, and hopefully I'll win at the end and have a race from there.
Aston Martin factory driver Darren Turner last raced in British GT in 2019, but he's back this weekend to add a little extra spice to the GT4 battle. His CV is so long it would stretch the whole length of the Silverstone circuit, but his successes at Silverstone include a race victory in the Blancpain Endurance Championship back in 2013. Will we see him at the pointy end again this weekend?
I think for us this weekend it's about just collecting points. We need to be there at the end of the race, get to see the checkered flag, make sure the team runs for a race strategy, the guys get a chance to do the pit stops, me and Matt get plenty of time on the track, and to collect some points. If we can finish where we've just qualified in fourth position, that's a good start. If we can be on the podium, then fantastic. But the first thing is just a clean race and get those laps under our belt and give everyone a lot of knowledge before they go on to the next round.
Hello and welcome to Silverstone for the Silverstone 500. It's a very, very exciting race meeting. It really is the most prestigious one on the calendar. A couple of new drivers, old drivers that we've seen before. Hunter Abbott is here. Darren Turner returns with a brand new team. And a new man joins us in the commentary box with Andy McEwen, a man who knows all about this championship. He won it back in 2001. It's Marino Franchitti. Great to have you here.
It's good to be here. I can't believe it's 20 years ago that I was here myself racing. Very excited for this race today though.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking at us behind at these amazing array of cars, there are no cars here at the moment behind us, but you've been in the pits, you've seen them all. There's a huge array. How different is the championship now to what it was back in the early noughties?
As proud as I am of winning British GT, it was nothing like this then. The strength and depth of teams, drivers. Now the GT3 platform and GT4 has given such a different look to this championship, and it is such high profile and so difficult to get out there and win.
We often talk about different circuits suiting different types of car. Silverstone, in particular, what's it going to suit? The rear, the middle engine cars, the front engine cars?
We're just discussing that before we came on air, and it seems to be that the front engine cars on the long, fast-flowing corners have an advantage. But the Lamborghini's up on the front row, so it still could work out for those guys.
It was a bit of an anomaly, wasn't it? One Lamborghini sticking out from the rest. You've got to call the shots with Andy McEwen. And I know you're very excited by this. You've called the shots before, but this is a kind of a new task for you.
It is. I'm really going to be leaning on Andy for knowledge. I've obviously kept up with British GT over the years, but I definitely don't have the knowledge that he has. So I'm just excited to watch this race and see. It's going to be like a game of chess over the 3 hours, working out the pit schedule and when they're going to come in, when they're going to pit early. It's going to be really exciting, and I don't think we're going to see it. How it's going to play out until right at the end, and obviously the weather could play its part too.
And at the moment it's looking pretty overcast and nasty, so it really will come down to strategy, and you've got to kind of give everything you can in that commentary box. You've got to run all the way down there as well and get into it. So we're going to let Marino disappear off now and go and meet up with Andy as we hand over to Andy and I get some drivers to talk to.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bryn and Marino. We will see Marino up here in a moment or two. This is it then, the second round of the championship, but arguably the biggest race of the season. The Silverstone 500 competing for the RAC trophy, the home of British motor racing, playing host to this famous event as well. The 10th anniversary, as Bryn was saying, of the Silverstone 500 on the British GT calendar. And we've got typical British summertime weather. Yes, it's 18 degrees, but it doesn't really feel like that. There is a lot of grey sky. In fact, it's blanket grey sky. And there's just this little bit of drizzle in the air that's been lingering all day long without ever really becoming anything more significant. But there is the threat of rain, particularly in the final hour of the race. And that final hour, as Marino really kind of alluded to there on the grid, that is where everything comes together. It's the final pit stop, remember, where the success penalties are served for the teams that were on the podium at Brands Hatch. It's the final hour that will see the final driver changes, and the teams will want, ideally, their quicker pro driver in the car for as much of that final stint as possible. And if you've come in and made what you think will be your final pit stop and then it rains and you have to come in and change tyres, then you can be on the back foot all of a sudden compared to those that maybe have played a gamble and saved their third and final pit stop for a little bit later on. It's going to be a fascinating race with more than 30 cars on the grid across the two classes as well. Lots and lots of stories to follow up on. Barwell Motorsport are on the front row of the grid, as Bryn was saying, and he's down there now with the reigning champion, Sandy Mitchell.
Yes, the reigning champion indeed does get his race suit on. You're not starting in the car, of course, the car pulls into position here.
Yeah.
Just before that car arrived, we were talking actually about your last time out at Brands Hatch. It didn't go to plan for you two.
Yeah, it was a tricky one for us at Brands Hatch. I mean, we qualified well and Adam was getting on okay, sort of in the top 5 or 6 for the first stint, but just had some unfortunate contact with another car and meant that we ended up in the gravel, and that put us a couple laps down. So yeah, we didn't take any overall championship points from round 1, but you know, we were confident that we had good speed, and we've been able to carry that over into this round, and we're starting on the front row again here at the Silverstone 500, which is fantastic, and yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, as you say, promoted to the front row because of a penalty to the TF Sport car. For yourself then with the championship, a new teammate as well, how's that relationship come along really?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really good. Obviously Adam was racing in the sister car when I was with Rob last year with Phil Keane, so I know him and Phil well from that, and you know, he's raced with Barwell for a couple of years now like me, so yeah, with Phil moving over to WPI, it was an opportunity for me to pair up with Adam, and it's going really well so far. We're getting along well, and yeah, both working together really well, and I think you know, he had a really good quali yesterday, and that's helped to put it on the front row, so we're really happy with how it's going, and hopefully he can have a consistent run in the top 2 here at the start of the race, and then we'll be right in the mix.
Yeah, exactly. Well, best of luck.
Thanks very much.
So Sandy Mitchell then, if you cast your mind back to the end of last year, was a winner here at Silverstone, as Bryn said, won the championship alongside Rob Collard, and that number 1 car has been by far and away the most competitive of the Lamborghinis this weekend, and they've ended up inheriting a front row starting position alongside this car, the number 14. 2C's Motorsport raced in the championship last year with 2 McLarens. They are back with a race-by-race entry in their Mercedes-AMG GT3, and Hunter Abbott and Martin Kodrich dominated qualifying yesterday to stick the Mercedes on pole with Barwell's number 1 car alongside. Now, in GT4, at the end of last year, it was Century BMW that won the race here. Weldon and Andrew Gordon-Colebrook victorious. Much the same kind of story at Brands Hatch, where, again, they inherited the victory from Assetto Motorsport, but it ended up being a 1-2 finish for Century Motorsport BMWs, and they're going to be looking strong again here today. Sticking with GT3 for a second, though, actually, Giacomo Petrobelli down on the grid with Bryn.
Giacomo, welcome to the Silverstone 500. Not where you wanted to start with that penalty.
No, but I think the car is quick enough to make progress, hopefully. Qualifying was very close. Probably with the exception of the 2C Mercedes, we're all very close. So I think it'll make for an interesting race. So P2, P4 is not a huge difference in a 3-hour race.
Well, good luck, all right?
Thanks.
Yeah, Giacomo Petrobelli in the TF Sport Aston Martin, another race-by-race entry, but TF Sport, great to have them back in the championship with 2 of their GT3 Aston Martins. That car qualified second, and the penalty that Giacomo was talking about there came after qualifying yesterday because they crossed the blend line on the exit of the pit lane. So they were given a 2-place grid penalty. There was another car given a 2-place grid penalty as well. That was the Academy Motorsport Ford Mustang. Matt Cowley, for some reason in his qualifying session, did not get 2 flying laps in, and you must set a minimum of 2 time laps in order to be counted. So a 2-place penalty for them as well. Morgan Tilbrook there will start the Enduro Motorsport McLaren. Let's hope he starts. Anyway, he crashed on the warm-up lap at Brands Hatch. He and Marcus Klutner, you can see just giving him some last-minute words of advice, had a brilliant effort in qualifying yesterday to qualify 6th in only their 2nd ever GT3 race. A fantastic effort from them. As I said, GT4, BMW looked strong. Century Motorsport BMWs in particular looked strong at Brands Hatch with that 1-2, 57 winning for number 9. But on pole position today is the Stella Motorsport Audi. Richard Williams will start the car and hand over to Senan Fielding halfway through, and he's down there now with Bryn.
Yeah, I've just hot-tailed it from the front of the grid to the middle of the grid, which is the start of the grid for GT4. You guys are going to be pretty happy with the starting position.
Yeah, I think having pole position for the start of the Silverstone 500 is always that bit of confidence boost. Stella Motorsport have done an absolute phenomenal job. They've got the car sorted all weekend. From FP1 yesterday morning, me and Richard have been so confident in the car, and we was quite surprised with the pole position, but absolutely ecstatic. And now, obviously, today's the day where it actually counts. So, like I say, we're here to have a good race. We're going to see how it goes. It's 3 hours long. A lot can happen. Obviously, the weather's looking a bit unpredictable, so I think we're just going to have to see where we're at around about 3:10.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, it is very cloudy and the strategy must be changeable. Quickly, what have you got planned for your strategy?
The team are on the toes. They've got, they're prepared for every eventuality. So I've got 100% confidence in them. I just get told to jump in the car and do my job, but until that point, I'll leave it down to those boys.
Well, great stuff. Good luck to you.
No, thank you very much.
So Sen and Fielding then will be watching on nervously as Richard Williams pilots the Stella Motorsport Audi from pole position. They had a 5th place finish in GT4 at Brands Hatch last time out. So the grid being cleared then, 3 hours of racing is not that far away from getting underway. Marino has joined me up here in the commentary box, hot-footed it up here. I think he's just about had time to catch his breath, and that might be the last chance you get to catch your breath for about 3 hours, Marino. This is going to be a lively race.
It's definitely going to be lively. I love the atmosphere on the grid there. It was fantastic. Getting across a gravel trap to get here was quite interesting for me. As much time as I've spent in the gravel trap, it's still not easy getting through them. But yeah, on the grid, the atmosphere's building. There's a lot of excitement there, and it's going to be interesting. It's windy. It's cold. Is it going to rain? There's a lot to play out here over the next 3 hours.
It's June and we're at Silverstone, so I'd say the chance of rain is pretty high, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
The car's about to head out onto their green flag lap then. In a moment or two we will confirm what the grid looks like. It is this number 14 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes, then started by Hunter Abbott, making a welcome return to the championship that starts on pole position. There are quite a couple of Mercedes actually and front engine Aston Martins that have qualified well. They could be strong here in the first stint. Adam Ballon starts for Barwell Motorsport alongside Hunter Abbott on row number 1 then. No points at Brands Hatch for that number 1 car. They need a good result today. Ian Loggy from Ram Racing has Giacomo Petrobelli in the TF Sport Aston Martin on row 2 for company. Brendan Aree makes a welcome return, having entertained us all here at the end of last year, and he's got Morgan Tilbrook for Enduro Motorsport alongside him. Andrew Howard in the Beechdene AMR Aston Martin is 7th alongside Leo Machitsky, who will have a 10-second penalty to serve for finishing 3rd at Brands Hatch. Stuart Proctor starts for Balfe Motorsport, 9th on the grid ahead of Richard Neary, who had an off in practice yesterday, meaning his son Sam has limited running here this weekend as a result. James Cottingham, another welcome returnee, having starred at Brands Hatch, is 11th ahead of the Paddock Motorsport Bentley of Kelvin Fletcher. Row number 7 then is where we find Bonamy Grimes, who had a spin in qualifying yesterday. Mia Fluitt, along with her teammate Ewan Hankey, make the jump up to GT3. They're the reigning GT4 Pro-Am champions, with Nick Jones in the Team Parker Racing Porsche and Michael Igoe, winner last time at Brands Hatch, 16th on the grid here today. Seamus Jennings in the All-Am GCAT Racing Porsche rounds out the GT3 field ahead of Richard Williams, pole position in GT4 in the Stella Motorsport Audi. Then we've got 2nd and 3rd in the GT4 grid. The Toyota of John Ferguson ended up in the gravel at Brands Hatch. Will Burns ended up on the top step of the podium though, and he starts 3rd in GT4 this time. Then it's Matt Topham, who shares with Darren Turner. They are a full season entry. They just missed the season opener at Brands Hatch. They're back, we hope, for the rest of the year now. And Mark Sansom in the Assetto Motorsport Ginetta that had that dramatic puncture last time out. Chris Salkeld was 2nd at Brands Hatch. He is there with Nick Halstead in the Fox Motorsport McLaren on the next row of the grid, row 12 overall, getting into the back end of the GT4 grid now. Michael Benyaya in the first of the Team Rocket RJN McLarens, and Jack Brown for Balfe Motorsport alongside him. And we've got Katie Milner, another RJN car with her teammate Jordan Collard alongside. Collard was on the podium last time in the number 2 Rocket RJN McLaren. And then working our way towards the back, we've got Dave Whitmore in the Car Gods with Sicily Motorsport Mercedes. Matt Cowley after that penalty in the 61 Ford Mustang right at the back of the grid. Right then, Marino, very quickly, because we're not far away from getting the race started. What do you think? Who are the favourites? 2Cs look strong in qualifying.
2Cs, first time out with the Mercedes, but the jump from the McLaren, it doesn't seem to have slowed them down any. They're right up the front. I'm just talking to Johnny Adam there a little while ago, and he's very excited about how their car was feeling this morning and how his teammate Andrew was going on full tanks. I guess we got 3 hours to find out the answer to that question.
Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? Just having the fastest car does not win you this race. There is so much that has to come together in order for you to be lifting that RAC trophy.
Look at that field.
It looks good, doesn't it? British GT is in a really strong place at the moment. When you look at this grid as they come 2 by 2 out of Luffield, it does make the hairs on the back of your arms stand on end, doesn't it? 3 hours of racing, the Silverstone 500 then, round number 2 of the 2021 Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Martin Kodrich for 2Cs Motorsport on pole, with reigning, Adam Ballon in the number 1 car for Barwell Motorsport alongside him. When the red lights go out, we will be racing at Silverstone. That happens now. The thunder roars as they head towards Copse Corner. On the inside line, Martin Kodrich will hold on to the race lead. Into second stays Adam Ballon. Do they all get through Copse? Cold tyres, it's all very tight indeed. GT3 is all safe and sound, so is GT4, though a bit of argy-bargy already there between the Toyota and the BMW, just as we saw last time at Brands Hatch. On board with Richard Neary in the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes, getting his elbows out as well as he tries to dig his way up the order, dicing away there with one of the TF Sport Aston Martins. All cleanly through Maggots and Beckett's, though. Marino, it's not really worth getting too stuck in on this first lap, is it? You don't want to ruin your race, but this is the time when you can make progress.
You can make progress. People trying to make progress there. I think this is the time, though. Track position's been so important previous years for this race. That's why people that have made the early pit stops sometimes have come out in front, because they've kept track position. People that don't, if they're at the back of the queue, it's hard to race your way back to the front.
Ooh, racing his way to the front, though, there, look, was the number 6 of Ian Logie ahead of Adam Ballon, and he brings Brendan Aribe with him as well. Brendan Aribe in the McLaren, off, I'm afraid, though, has gone the 21 McLaren, and that is Mia Fluitt, the Team Rocket car, and that's down at Stoke Corner. I did see a car running wide. I think it was Mia, who in her first GT3 start, I'm afraid, hasn't got very far. Oh, sideways, and that's Machitsky around, Liam Machitsky around right in front of, that was Andrew Howard and Kelvin Fletcher, who did a brilliant job to avoid him, but the Lamborghini goes spinning, the car that finished 3rd at Brands Hatch, and that looked to me, Marino, like cold tyres.
Cold tyres, as a tyre going down, it went so quickly. He did great. He did a really good job not to hit anyone or the wall, and he's recovered it quickly. And that's the thing, you stop in these cars, it's not like you can a manual where you can just select first. You've got to go back through the gears. He's done a good job. He's got it going again. We'll see if he comes in. Maybe he's flat spotted the tyres, or maybe he has an issue. But it is cold out there, so if he'd lost temperature in the warm-up lap, that certainly showed there.
And there's this drizzle in the air, isn't there, as well? That could also have caught him out potentially. So a dramatic opening lap of racing then, which is led comfortably by Hunter Abbott then, who is in that number 14 car. Side by side for second place, Ian Logie and Brendan Aribe. Aribe tries to get up the inside at Copse and can't do it. Those of you who tuned in for the Silverstone 500 at the end of last year will probably remember Brendan Aribe for some of his spectacular driving. He was really getting stuck in on his first appearance in British GT. We were hoping then that he'd make a return. He's already had a brilliant start here, hasn't he then? Aribe started 5th, he's up to 3rd and was very nearly in 2nd place there. But now he's got Adam Ballon trying to attack him once again. So we've got 2 front-engine Mercedes at the front. We do expect those cars to be quick. Mercedes always go well here, don't they? What is it, do you think, about these big front-engine GT3 cars that suit this circuit?
I think the stop-and-go circuits like Alton, Brands, they suit the mid-engine cars just because of how well they brake. Round here braking's not quite so important. The high-speed balance is, and those front-engine cars just seem to work very well in those situations. The way that the weight distribution is, all seems to come together well. Great battle here in GT4.
Oh, Matt Topham there getting elbowed out of the way first by John Ferguson and then by Matt Cowley in the 61 Ford Mustang. Remember, on board with him now, slicing and dicing, goes back to the inside of Topham there, and he will go through. Remember that Matt Cowley started stone dead last on this grid, and he has worked his way up now into the battle for a top 5 within GT4. A brilliant opening lap or so for the Academy Mustang that really is due a good result, you'd have to say. Century Motorsport BMW there, the number 9 of Chris Salkel just pokes its nose out of line, and Topham just needs to be careful here, doesn't he, in that Aston Martin?
Yeah, he came on the way into the chicane there, he came back across when he wasn't clear of the car, a little bit of contact, he got away with that. He's just got to be careful. You don't need to be fighting for every inch of track at this point in the race.
Yeah, that's what Matt Cowley's doing though, and it's working well, isn't he? He's got another one now, whilst we were talking about Matt Topham, gets himself ahead of John Ferguson. So Matt Cowley, who is a silver graded driver, remember, Cowley is in one of these silver class GT4 cars. Now they have extra time to spend in the pit stops, 14 seconds extra compared to the other GT4s at each pit stop. There was Machitsky's spin. He was offline, wasn't he? Dicing there with Morgan Tilbrook. So dirty side of the road, cold tyres, just a bit too much steering lot maybe, and off he went.
It went so quickly there. I don't know if these cars, as you get more and more aero on these GT3 cars, it's very windy out there, gust of wind, offline. It can all come together to cause an issue like that.
Yes, and what an issue it was. He did continue, by the way, and did not pit. So Machitsky is 16th and last in GT3 at the moment. Well, ahead of Mia Fluid, I guess, who did not get going. No, she did get going, yes. So Mia Fluid has rejoined, but I think she'd stalled the car when she had the spin initially. So Hunter Abbott then, 2.5 seconds nearly ahead of Ian Loggy in second place. Brendan Aribe is third, Ballon fourth, Petrovelli fifth, Richard Neary up to sixth now ahead of Morgan Tilbrook. In GT4, it is Richard Williams still leading in the Audi by a second now over Brands Hatch winner Will Burns in the BMW, and then in third place the number 3 of Michael Ben-Yaya there. That's one of those Rocket RJN McLarens. You can see it just there actually, the number 3 with Matt Cowley breathing down his neck, and that would be the fight for second place in the third place in the GT4 category.
We didn't see much speed from the McLarens in qualifying, but the race situation full of fuel seems to suit them a little bit better so far, so we'll see how that develops over a stint and whether they can maintain that pace.
And the McLarens tend to be quite good on their tyres, I seem to remember, and that is a factor here because you could be going a full hour sometimes between pit stops. 3 mandatory stops, remember, so you'll at some point have to do a slightly shorter stint, but if you are choosing to do a full hour, you're going to have to monitor that tyre wear over the course of the stint. Cowley there trying to find a way past Ben-Yaya. Then this is for third place in GT4, the Mustang versus the McLaren. 2 more different looking cars here you couldn't hope to find, could you?
No, the Mustang's a bit. I used to have a road Mustang when I was with Ford, and they are big cars, but the Multimatic guys did such a good job of turning that into a race car. It's interesting, I think we saw the moves that it made on the first lap. I think it works its tyres harder, it's a heavier car, and I think it works the tyres a bit harder, and we saw how easy it was able to get past some cars early on. We'll see again if it can maintain that through the stint.
Absolutely nothing to choose between the two in a straight line there, was there? We were on board with Cowley there. We weren't getting any closer to the McLaren, but nor was it getting away from us. Chris Salkeld side by side with Matt Topham gets through. Now his next target is John Ferguson. These two might not be the best of friends because they came together at Brands Hatch, did the Toyota and the BMW. Salkeld tried to get through on the inside. There was a bit of debate as to whose fault it was. It was deemed a racing incident in the end, but the end result was that Ferguson's race was ruined and Salkeld went on to finish second in GT4, so there may be a little bit of bad blood possibly between those two. There goes Mark Sanson, meanwhile, in the Ginetta, who really just wants a clean race. I was speaking actually yesterday to Mark and to his teammate Charlie Robertson in particular, who said that they just needed to tweak the setup a little bit, make sure the tyres are going to stay on the car, quite literally, for the entire stint. Back to this third place battle though, and Cowley is a bit stuck here, isn't he?
He is. Looks like he's got a good run onto the hanger straight there. Let's see if he can get it done. There's no gap for him on the inside, so he's going to have to go to the outside if he wants to make it happen.
Yeah, looks to the outside. He's later on the brakes, and you can go around the outside here as long as you can find the grip, because the next corner is a tight left-hander into club. But good driving there, wasn't it, from Ben-Yaya in front? He closed the door. He didn't chop aggressively in front of Cowley, just drifted off onto the natural line.
Cowley wasn't able to maintain that outside line. If you're going to do that move and you're going to get it the inside for the chicane, you've got to stay there, and he just wasn't able to do it. But he's working pretty hard. He seems to have a bit of a pace advantage right now, and I think there's an inevitability about this at the moment. It's just where he can make the move happen.
They're already 6.5 seconds behind the top two in GT4, so you can see why Cowley wants to get on with this, especially given the fact that he, like Ben-Yaya and Williams and Burns up the road, has this 14-second extra to spend in the pit lane at each of their 3 pit stops. So that's certainly going to make the silver-graded teams' lives more difficult. Further back, Matt Topham continuing to lose ground now. That will be Jack Brown, I think, that's gone through now in the McLaren, and then Nick Halstead as well for Fox Motorsport, not far behind. In fact, a sea of McLarens behind them, because Mia Fluid in the GT3 example is also trying to work her way through that group. It's all pretty frenetic out there, isn't it? Considering this is a 3-hour race, they are not hanging around in the early stages. So back to third place then, and this is Adam Ballon challenging Brendan Aribe. So Aribe, after a strong start now, does have Ballon behind him. Now, Adam in the past, we've noticed sometimes has been perhaps a little bit too cautious when he's been out in the car, but he's got good pace here. He clearly feels good in the car, and he fancies his chances of getting back onto the podium.
He certainly looks like he's got a bit of a pace advantage right now. Again, having the pace advantage is one thing, finding a way through is going to be something else. But they're definitely closing in on second at the same time, closing in on Loggy. I mean, Abbott is just 4 seconds up the road at the moment. He's disappeared right now.
Yeah, but we saw this from both Hunter and his teammate Martin Kodrich. They were so quick in qualifying yesterday. They were always going to be tough to beat. Back to Leo Machitsky, who's up to 13th now. The latest scalp that he's claimed was Bonamy Grimes there in the TF Sport Aston Martin. He's also found a way past the 2 Porsches of Nick Jones and Seamus Jennings. So Machitsky going well here, and I did wonder whether maybe we'd see that car make an early pit stop after its spin, but they've clearly decided to keep him in the car for a bit longer. Don't know where to look here, do you? Side by side for third in GT4. Cowley has this time, Marino, got this outside line work.
Yeah, he's made it work, and now he's got the inside, and he should be able to complete this move. Lovely. That was a lovely move. He'd kind of warmed himself up for that the lap before, and he got it completed this time.
Yeah, you can do that, I guess, can't you, as a driver? You can kind of have an experimental look at a move, and if it doesn't quite work out, you spend the next lap thinking, right, what do I have to do differently? And that's clearly what he did there, executed the move well.
And now you can see already he's pulled out a couple of car lines instantly. This is difficult for Mia here in an unfamiliar car, coming back through the GT4 traffic. She's never dealt with this before, so she's having to tune in to the speed difference and how these cars race each other. And I was talking to her just before the race. She's not had a lot of time in this GT3 car, so it's a real baptism of fire. But looking at her pace, she's been really close and getting better every single session. So it's great to see that she was able to recover from the problem. Now she's just banking miles, and that's what she needs to do.
Yes, and it's a long race, you know, 1 safety car and they're right back in this. And Ewan Hankey was fastest in warm-up this morning, remember? So, okay, only warm-up, I realise that, but still, that car does have pace. Matt Topham up the inside of Salkeld, he's looking, Salkeld leaves him room, and neither of them quite knows what the other one's going to do there. Topham didn't fully commit, and Salkeld didn't really know whether to close the door.
Yeah, it was nice driving by the 9 there to leave that lane open. No danger of any contact, and that's good to see. It was interesting, the BMW, I thought it had a head of steam going there and was going to pull away, but he hasn't really been able to close in on the Toyota since he got into that position.
Yeah, Ferguson is building a little gap now, isn't he? John Ferguson in the Toyota is 0.8 of a second at the end of that lap, clear of the BMW behind him, and this will be the fight for about 7th place, I think, in the GT4 category, still being led by Richard Williams by now 2.1 seconds over Will Burns in second. Matt Topham, though, also seems to have settled in here, doesn't he, Marino? Well, we'll get back to that in a second because Brendan Aribe has shaken off Adam Ballon and is now snapping at the heels of Ian Loggy. Brendan Aribe maybe just lost his rhythm there for a couple of laps, but he's right back in the groove now.
It's interesting as well, these cars with the aero that they have, when you're running close to another car, you're losing balance. You're either taking air from the front or taking downforce off the car overall, and that works the tyre harder. So you just don't want to sit there in someone's wheel tracks all the time. You've got to dive about, you've got to look for clean air, and these cars are so aero dependent these days that you have to think about that, because it's all fine and well to sit right behind someone at the beginning of a stint, but you can really pay for that later if you're burning your tyres off while doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Things start to overheat quite quickly, and from there it is a bit of a vicious cycle. Right, Chris Salkeld now with Matt Topham right behind him. As I was starting to say there, Marino, Matt Topham was going backwards in the early part of the race, but he seems to have settled in now. He's found his spot in the queue. He's now no longer under pressure from the car behind, and now he's starting to challenge Salkeld ahead. I was talking to Darren Turner yesterday, who is sharing the car with Matt Topham, who just about hangs on to the place there from the number 90 of Jack Brown. But Matt has always wanted to race in British GT, and specifically has always had his eye on GT4. And it's great to finally see him racing in the championship, and now he's got nearly 15 minutes under his belt. He looks a lot more comfortable.
He does, and obviously the fuel's burning off every lap, so tyres are wearing, but also the fuel's burning off. It's quite cold today, and he seems to just be finding more and more balance as the stint goes on. I know that Darren's really enjoying driving the GT4. I think maybe not enjoying how fast the GT3s catch you and where they put themselves. He's usually in the GT3 car, but he's really enjoying how the car moves about and not having as much downforce as the GT3.
Back to GT3 now. Richard Neary starting to ask some questions here of Giacomo Petrobelli ahead. That's for 5th position. A couple of cars being warned about track limits as well. Car 11, which is the Paddock Motorsport Bentley of Kelvin Fletcher, is on his first, now his second warning. That's just changed. So too Michael Igoe, who has actually moved here from 16th to 12th. So Igoe moving forwards a little bit here, but remember that car has that extra 20 seconds to serve at the final pit stop. These success penalties for the podium finishes at Brands Hatch only have to be served at the third and final stop. Second place battle back through here, Marino, and Brendan really looks up for this, and then we go back to GT4. Wherever you look here, there are battles, aren't there?
And any of them, you could say, oh, that's got to be for the lead, how hard they're racing, but it's generally for 4th or 5th place. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The thing is, at this point, while you hope there's a safety car if you're further back to close in, you can't count on that happening. We've seen it before where a race will go green the whole way. So while you can relax to a degree for a 3-hour race, you can't afford to lose too much time.
Yeah, the chance of a safety car in the early stages is a lot higher than it is later on. So now we've got the first quarter of an hour out of the way. You'd imagine there is a better chance now that this could go green all the way. Change for 4th then here in GT4. That is Jordan Collard ahead of Michael Ben-Yaya now. So teammates, although Ben-Yaya is in one of these McLaren driver development program cars run by Rocket RJN, but then the actual Rocket RJN car, if you like, the number 2 car of Jordan Collard that was on the podium last time, moves up into 4th place now. So, 2nd place, Ian Loggy, Brendan Iribe. They've gapped Adam Ballon a little bit now. Is this Ballon... Oh, yeah, Neary there, side by side with Petrobelli, so we'll get back to that in a second. Richard Neary round the outside at Club, and again into Abbey. Surely this won't work, and he does have to back out, but Richard Neary... not backwards in coming forwards. There's the risk here, though, isn't there, Marino, of a bit of a train forming behind this Aston Martin.
There is. He's obviously looking in his mirrors and he's seen those cars approaching him, so he wants to get past and he wants to get on his way and try and close the gap to the cars in front. But it's again, easier said than done.
We're going to see a...
It's always... Let's have a look at this. So... Oh, wow, uses the ABS to its maximum there. He had the move done, so I'm be interested to see where the...
Yeah, runs a bit wide there through the middle part.
Ah, there's just the Astons there. He never cleared it completely. Great driving by the Aston as well there. That's really heads up to not... It was quite easy to give up at that point, but he's managed to hang on to it without putting himself in any danger either, which is lovely. You know, he left racing room for the other car as well. It's fantastic to see that. Yeah, reacted well there to the dive up the inside and managed to snap back again straight away. Matt Topham, some changing here then. Salkeld is ahead of Ferguson cleanly this time, and Matt Topham is now trying to follow him through. So John Ferguson in the Toyota GR Supra, run by the Toyota Gazoo Racing UK squad, with a bit of Toyota factory backing now as well, really showing their commitment to motorsport across the world, but in the UK as well, with a touring car effort, and now this GT4 car as well. And John Ferguson is going to have his work cut out here, because Topham does look quick, and the way Salkeld's getting away from the Toyota as well shows that maybe Ferguson is starting to struggle. Yeah, possibly the balance is going away from him a little bit. You can see on the entry of the corner there, he's got a little bit of oversteer as he was turning in. So he's trying to smooth that out and look after the tyres. Yes, looks like he's lacking a bit of pace compared to his competition at the moment. Oh, that was a little bit aggressive there. Oh dear, that is the 90 that's gone around, so that is Jack Brown. He was trying to attack Topham ahead, who was also trying to get up the inside of Ferguson. So sometimes you need to read that situation, don't you? If the two cars ahead are fighting each other, it's sometimes better to just sit back and let them go at it. What do you think? Was the move on? No, because he wasn't going to clear the car. He had to be alongside earlier there, and he was putting himself in the situation where the guy in front decided to turn in. Contact was going to be inevitable. It's a difficult one, because you see that opportunity and you obviously want to take it, but a corner like that, you have to have cleared them, because otherwise they're just going to be able to hang on around the outside anywhere and be on the inside for the next hairpin. Yeah, indeed. So that was unfortunate. Brendan Iribe, though, is into second place now. He's ahead of Ian Loggy. So Ian Loggy has had to give up that P2. And we'll see now what Iribe's pace is like then. Now he's in clean air. They're 7.4 seconds adrift of the race leader, Hunter Abbott, though. There go the second, third and fourth place cars. There is Petrobelli still fifth, ahead of Richard Neary. So Neary, having very briefly been in fifth place down at Club, is now stuck in the wheel tracks of the Aston Martin again. Morgan Tilbrook is still seventh. Andrew Howard is eighth. Kelvin Fletcher ninth, and Stuart Proctor rounds out the top 10, with Machitsky now back to 11th
position.
He's on a charge, isn't he?
He really is, isn't he? Now, the charge, though, might come to a stop now for some of the GT3 drivers because they have already, less than 20 minutes into the race, caught traffic, and they probably won't have a traffic-free lap now for the rest of the 3 hours.
No, that can be an advantage, though. You've got to look at traffic in two ways. You can go, this is going to cost me time, or you can say, right, how can I lose less time than the competition? And that's the way you've got to look at it, otherwise you just drive yourself mad.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to lose time, but also, as you said, to benefit. That is the car gods with Sicily Motorsport Mercedes of Dave Whitmore that's been off. That's down at the Maggots and Beckett's complex, so not sure how he got there, whether he jumped or whether he was pushed, but the red Mercedes, no damage evident on the car, manages to get going again. Now, top him up the inside of Ferguson. That is how you make the move there, isn't it?
Now, as you see, he was alongside way back, and that meant the move was done before they even got to the apex, and that's what you need to do into that tight first corner.
Yes, evidently.
Third corner.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Depends which track you're on. This really confuses me now at Silverstone when we use the different pits.
Yes. Right, black and white warning flags again now. That's a third warning for Michael Igo. So he's making progress, but he's exceeding track limits too much. And it's a difficult line to balance on that, isn't it? Because he needed to dig himself out of that hole after qualifying. But if you then get a track limits penalty, there was no point, really.
No, that's going to be a busy for no reason. He really needs to watch that because he's just going to get a penalty. It's black and white. It's not like, it was just a little bit over. They don't care. When you're out there, the track limit penalty is called, and he's going to undo all of that good work if he goes wide even once more.
Yeah, absolutely. We said we were going to mention track limits a lot. I think we should start an unofficial drinking game. Every time someone gets a track limits penalty, well, I mean, it's going to keep going all race long, isn't it? Here is Mark Sansom in the Ginetta challenging Nick Halstead in the McLaren, and that is Brendan Iribe, isn't it? That's the number 70, and damage to the right rear corner. Now, we haven't seen it, Marino, but they were in traffic at the time.
You can see that the Pirelli's off the tyre, so he's had contact with somebody. There you go.
And that's why Dave Whitmore was off at Chapel. Oh, and Ian Logie was really delayed in all of that as well. We couldn't see the start, so we can't lay blame at anyone's door there, but that's probably not the last time we're going to see a collision between a GT3 and a GT4 car.
Unfortunately, it's not. You could just see there, as he's limping back, that the Pirelli was gone off the tyre, so you could see there's contact of some kind. I'd love to get a better look at that, to see it earlier, to see what happens.
Yeah, that is really unfortunate. It's just that closing speed, isn't it? And if you catch them at the wrong place, because you can lose a second or so behind them, you don't want to lose that. But
well, you have that downforce to be able to run lines that a GT4 is not capable of. But also the GT4, with the lack of downforce and the weight, uses all the track. So you put yourself in a certain place, you're putting yourself in the hands of the GT4. If they allow the car to run wide, you're going to run out of road quite quickly.
That was close, wasn't it? That was Andrew Howard up the inside of Morgan Tilbrook, and Sansom goes around. Sansom did well to avoid contact at the previous corner when those two went side by side underneath him, and then there was contact at the next one, and he had a half spin, so Sansom's going to lose a position or two in GT4, but that could have been a lot worse, as Andrew Howard now really is starting to move forward nicely. He's now into 6th position, and of course he's got Ian Logie, the delayed Ian Logie now, not far ahead. That Aston Martin looking strong in the middle part of the stint.
It really is. As I say, talking to Johnny Adam earlier, he was really happy with how the car felt on full tanks. The lower temperatures that we're seeing today, he thought would suit the car. So he was full of the joys of spring and ready to go racing.
Yes. Now we are, as I said, nearly 25 minutes into the race now, as John Ferguson has to run wide because up the inside went Leo Machitsky into Cops Corner to put a lap on the GT4 Toyota. Maybe time to start thinking about pit stops, because you have these 3 mandatory driver changes to make, but it's only a 3-hour race. So whereas a traditional sort of GT World Challenge Europe 3-hour race, for example, would see a pit stop on the hour and they do 2 stops, we have to fit an extra one in somewhere. So at some point, Marino, you have to do a shorter stint. Now, where would you, if you were a team strategist, where would you like to do that short stint? At the start, the end, or the middle?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? I think you would, if you're in a GT3, I think you want to look at where the pockets of GT4 traffic is and maybe just pit before you get to that, because you then don't have to lose all that time getting through the pocket of cars. If you've got to make that stop anywhere, it's not a bad time to do it.
On board with Richard Neary then, in amongst the traffic. So put us in the driver's seat here then, Marino. You're fighting your way through traffic. Petrobelli's getting away from you. What are you thinking now?
You're thinking, I hope he gets held up by some cars when I don't. You're just trying to look ahead and you're trying to judge it. As I said earlier, when you're in a GT3 car, you do not want to catch a GT4 car in the middle of a fast corner or in a fast sequence of corners. You're trying to time it. Even if you have to back off a little bit, you back off the back of the car and get a run on the car so that you lose maybe 2 seconds instead of losing 4 or 5. You're just constantly making those calculations. And as I said before, I don't look at that as a negative. Traffic is a positive if you can use it well.
Yeah, which Richard will be hoping for a bit more of, although they're pretty much broken through the GT4 ranks. They're about to come up on Matt Cowley in the Ford Mustang, who of course is in 3rd place in GT4, so things might be a bit less frenetic. We're about to head, though, through one of the most iconic sequences of corners in world motorsport, really, out of Copse and down to Maggotts and Beckett. So we're going to ride, well, we were riding on board with Richard Neary. We cut back instead to Andrew Howard, who works his way up the inside of Michael Ben-Rya's GT4 McLaren as he continues to try and chase down the Mercedes ahead of Ian Loggie. So this is Loggie 5th, Howard 6th, Tilbrook 7th, and there Kelvin Fletcher 8th. Kelvin Fletcher and Martin Plowman, about 18 months or so ago now, started their own motorsport team, Paddock Motorsport, and they have run cars in lower categories in club championships pretty successfully here in the UK. That car, of course, was previously run by JRM, but for this weekend onwards, Paddock Motorsport, Kelvin and Martin's own team, have taken over the running. That's got to be hard work then, Marino. You're not only driving the car now, but you're running the entire team as well. Does that distract you, do you think, from the actual matter of driving?
I'm sure they've got a good team manager in place that takes that pressure away from you, but it's good. At least the team boss, if something goes wrong, isn't going to be giving you a hard time. I quite like the sound of that. It's an impressive job that these guys are doing, to be running as close to the front as they are already. It's very, very good to see. Here we have the car in the 70 car in the pits, getting the suspension. It was obviously a tie rod at the front, so there's a rod. Here we go. So are we going to get a check? Nah, we just see the end of it, unfortunately. We can't quite get to see how it started. We see the effect and not the cause. There's a tie rod, and basically that holds, we saw the wheel sticking out there, and there's a piece of suspension that holds it in place. That's obviously bent. The team, though, will have one preset, measured up, and it should, well, it's going to take them out of contention. They should be back on track in 2 or 3 laps, I would expect.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for them, though, is that they are a race-by-race entry, so ordinarily you'd say go out there, score some points, could help you in the championship in the long run, but they don't really care about points. They were here to try and win, and that was kind of it, really. So suspension damage, they were on the outside of the Mercedes, so whether the Mercedes ran wide, we're not too sure. Either way, it's clearly hurt the McLaren. Right, on board with Neary, we are now heading down to Maggotts and Beckett, so talk us through this. From watching him on board, do you think the car's working well?
Car's working well, and he's nice and relaxed. That's what you can see. I've heard that about these Mercedes for the gentleman driver. It's very, very nice to drive. It works well for them, and you can see that. He's not tense, he's not big inputs into the steering wheel, just using his flash button and trying to get the traffic out of the way, and he just looks like a man that's happy in his place of work there.
Yes, and he's got a run now on Petrobelli, who was delayed there through Chapel by some back markers. Neary is late on the brakes into Stowe.
Now you see there how he's offsetting himself, both on entry to the left and mid-corner on the right there, trying to find clean air, because that's downforce. When you're behind that car, you're getting dirty air and you feel the lack of grip. Oh, and he's got that move done. What a beauty. Beautiful move.
Right round the outside, just superior braking. Petrobelli tries this old cutback move again, but it doesn't work this time. That was seriously good overtaking there from Richard Neary. And look, they're not that far behind Adam Ballon, and that's for 2nd place. So Richard Neary has brought that Team ABBA Racing Mercedes right into contention now for a podium result. He is into 3rd, and he's only about 2 seconds now behind Adam Ballon. We've got 2 Mercedes now as well in these podium positions. It really does seem to be clicking here this weekend at AMG.
You could see how hard Petrobelli was working at the wheel compared to Neary. Neary is just very smooth.
Now, that is our GT4 leader, Richard Williams, in the pits. Now, this, we presume, is their first mandatory driver change, so this should now be Sen and Fielding jumping on board.
Nothing going on here.
No, there isn't, although they have this. Remember, this is a Silver Cup entry, so they've got not only the minimum pit stop time, which is 165 seconds from pit in to pit out, including the stationary time.
There's my old mate, Richard, out of the car. Yep, thumbs up. Good job, mate.
Watching on then, as Sen and Fielding serves the extra 14 seconds they have to serve because they're a Silver Cup car. So it's not a rushed process, a pit stop in this race, which is for safety reasons, if nothing else, just to make sure. And of course, you can't refuel and change tyres at the same time. So sometimes it looks like nothing happening, but that's just because they're counting down the clock. I
do love that as a driver, those time ones where you can relax rather than it being like a fire drill.
Yes, because when there is no minimum time, drivers tend to get thrown in and out of cars. It's all a very unceremonious process. There is Hunter Abbott, though, who is putting on a real display here, isn't he? 11.8 seconds clear of Ballon.
Very impressive, both by him and the 2Cs team, as we talked about earlier. This is their first race with the Mercedes, moving from the McLaren, the Bahraini-owned team. It's very, very impressive.
Out goes Sen and Fielding in the stellar performance Audi, so he's going to drop out just over a lap behind where he was, basically. I just noticed John Ferguson going into Cops, so he's going to be behind the Toyota now, but a lap behind as well. All right, let's head down to the man that's just vacated the Audi, Richard Williams.
So, Richard, you had your first stint there. That was a planned pit stop, we take it?
Absolutely, yeah. That's we went through various different options yesterday about how we might want to run our race, and that's the we're to plan at the moment. So absolutely on schedule. So very early on in the 3-hour race, but I'll be getting back in shortly and just seeing whether we can keep the car in one piece and keep the pace that we've got right now, and see if we can get it home.
It's a fairly early first change, though, isn't it?
Absolutely, but I mean, this is again, we've run all the various scenarios, and for us, this is the best way, the quickest way to run the 3-hour race. So absolutely no problems, on schedule, and looking forward to getting back in.
Thanks very much, Richard.
No worries, thank you.
So early pit stop, it was part of the plan. They have come back out onto the track, and we now
look at the mirror here. This is.
Oh, yes.
That's not going to help him very much there.
Well, he's got a good excuse for turning into someone, I suppose, if that were to happen like it did at Brands Hatch. But yeah, that is not ideal.
Camera's working, at least.
Yes, that's true. They've got the rear view camera, but that's a distraction, though, surely, if nothing else.
Usually. That is a major distraction. Well, he'd be getting to see his own face as well. I think that's actually got a camera built into it as well, so it's the same system. It's not. There's obviously a firewall there, so you can't see out the back. So they have that camera, 2 cameras in the car. Only one that's really any good to him at the moment.
Yeah, well, and what he doesn't want is for that to come off completely and either hit him, because it looks like quite a heavy bit of kit, or worse, get stuck under a pedal or something. I mean, we've heard of things like that happening before.
In the old days, before they had cameras in them, you just pull that off and stick it down the side of your seat. But I would be worried to pull that off and basically all the electronics to shut down because you've broken the circuit. They're going to have to do something about that in the pit stop, though, because I'm sure that the scrutineers will be looking at it and they will not be happy with that.
And is that something that the team will have seen now, and it might force them to change their strategy if they see they've got that issue? Although it's not slowing him down, do they maybe bring him in earlier than planned to get it sorted?
Possibly, or they just, if their strategy is to go further, they'll just push it until somebody tells them to do something. It depends what works best for them.
Right, well, things working pretty well for Century Motorsport now. Then they've inherited the GT4 lead. Will Burns here in the 57 BMW leads the category by only 11.6 seconds. So GT3 being led by 12.6 seconds by 2Cs, and Century leading GT4 by a very similar margin. Then Matt Cowley, second in GT4, is 8.4 seconds ahead of Jordan Collard. So given how tight it was in GT4 in the early stages, it has spread out a little bit now. But these silver-graded cars that filled out the top 5 places in GT4, that is a massive uphill struggle for them. These extra 14 seconds, every single time a new driver steps into that car, they're going to have a hole to dig out of.
That's a big hole to dig out of, but hopefully it allows good competition at the end, and when we get down to that last stint, they're all going to be trying to inhabit the same piece of track. That's how it should work.
Yes, that's the theory, and more often than not, that does seem to be exactly what happens. Across the line goes Ian Loggy there, 5th position for him now. Remember, ran as high as 2nd or 3rd, didn't he, earlier on? Kelvin Fletcher is only 4 tenths behind Morgan Tilbrook, so Bentley versus McLaren. Where is the Bentley strong? Where does Tilbrook maybe have to think about defending?
Everywhere. You imagine seeing that in your mirrors. I mean, it's just so big. Well, it looks through the high-speed corners there that Bentley's just so stable. And we were talking about it earlier, the mid-engine car definitely has the advantage under braking. But at this stage in a stint, it just depends how the tyre life is and how the balance is. You have tools in the car. You have traction control. You can adjust the throttle map. You can adjust the TC levels. You can adjust several different things, ABS, and you're constantly working with those just to keep the car in a happy place. And you've got to be the guys who will be most consistent over a stint are the guys that are the people that are the best at adjusting those and staying ahead of it.
Really good stint this from Calvin Fletcher as well.
Really is, isn't it?
We know how quick he is. He was always known in GT4 when he was in the Aston Martin a couple of years ago for being really consistent, quick, but consistent, smooth, didn't make many mistakes. Had a couple of little issues at Brands Hatch, although it was actually Martin Plowman that made more mistakes at Brands Hatch. Calvin has really transitioned over to GT3 really well. Right, we'll break away from this for a second then. I believe Bryn down in the pit lane has a little bit of news about that number 15 Toyota of John Ferguson.
Yeah, that's right, Andy. I was just talking to Scott McKenna, who's getting ready to get in the car. They said they might have to go and have a pit stop if the scrutineers tell them they must do, or the stewards say they must come in. But Scott said he knows how distracting it is because it happened to him yesterday. So it is a problem they've had before.
Right, okay, so someone needs to find some stronger screws maybe to keep that thing in place for future rounds. Thank you, Bryn. Right, look at who has arrived on the scene. This is Leo Machitsky. Now remember, he had that spin on the opening lap whilst he was racing Morgan Tilbrook. He's almost caught back up to Tilbrook now, who is currently holding that 7th place. This has been a mighty recovery drive. We're only just past half an hour in.
And he's only 24 seconds back from the leader. So where could he be without that spin? Yeah. And there's a long way to go. And that Lamborghini looks like it's in a very good place. And this is a fantastic drive by him.
And of course, they haven't yet unleashed their secret weapon, Dennis Lind, who's not such a secret anymore. Everyone seems to be cottoning on to just how good Dennis Lind is. But let's not forget how strong Leo Machitsky has looked in this stint. It's all quite tight, this actually, isn't it? Look, Loggy 5th in the pink Mercedes. Then Andrew Howard, the Aston Martin, is 6th. The McLaren of Morgan Tilbrook is 7th. The Bentley of Calvin Fletcher is 8th. The Lamborghini of Machitsky is 9th. There are people out there, Marino, who I talk to, and they still, for some reason, don't get GT racing, and they don't understand why I love it so much. But look at this. Mercedes, McLaren, Bentley, Lamborghini, Aston Martin, you cannot get better than this, and performance-wise, nothing to choose between them.
I mean, it's like your dream car garage, isn't it? It's just everything that you want to have there on your drive. And because of the performance balancing that we have, these cars are running so closely. It's such a good job that the SRO have managed to do to balance these cars. Of course, there's some tracks work better for you than others, but that's racing, and it is creating fabulous racing. We are a little bit of a snap there for Fletcher. He's obviously using the tyres to their maximum, and I can't help but notice that luminous yellow and green car in his mirror, and he can see it coming.
Yeah, Machitsky's caught them. Now he's got to try and pass them. But if you're Barwell here, are you tempted to bring that 63 car in? Because as quick as Machitsky's been, he's going to lose time trying to pass this lot, isn't he? Maybe if you stuck Dennis Lind in, got him out in some clear air, you could maybe get that undercut, couldn't you?
Possibly, but I think you're we've seen that the fastest car down the straight is the Bentley, so it's going to be difficult to pass it. But Barwell will be looking at whether it's better to try and get the car out in some clean air, as you say, or is getting more track position right now more important to them. But I do like that. I do like that theory of yours of getting the car in, getting some clean air and getting those fast laps in, and hopefully clearing them while being nowhere near them. So once you've done the pit stops, you've actually done the undercut and you've passed them already.
Yes, because then you can gain 4 positions potentially without ever having to go wheel to wheel with someone and risk a little knock or getting delayed, ending up on the grass. You know,
you may have a future in team management there. It's very good.
I do occasionally come out with a good idea, Marino, but it's not a regular thing. Ollie Milroy, by the way, is back in the race in that McLaren that Brendan Areve had the damage in. So great work by the squad.
And he's just done the fastest lap of the race.
He's also, though, got a 10-second stop-go penalty for a pit lane infringement, but I don't think he's going to care about that too much, is he?
No, not when you're 6 laps back, unfortunately. But this is a 2-minute. I think he's half a second quicker than the leader. He's going to be so frustrated that he's not in the fight.
Yeah, because I think they could have been race-winning contenders. I know they were 10 seconds or so behind the leader, but over a 3-hour race, that's not an insurmountable deficit. It is such a shame that they had that early tangle with the GT4 Mercedes, and there is confirmation of that stop-go penalty for Ollie Milroy. So he set the fastest lap because he's the first of the GT3 pros to jump in, so you would expect that, but nonetheless, really good pace being shown. Right, Machitsky is up the inside of Kelvin Fletcher. There's almost contact. This is the thing, you see. Yes, he's gained the place, but that was a risk. But that could have very easily gone wrong.
You could see that Fletcher was struggling on the tyres there. He was offline through that whole sequence of corners, and that allowed Machitsky to line him up and to make that move. Yeah, he was right on the limit there. Managed to clear him without any contact, so that's another place made. This is a really impressive run that he's on.
Yes, so that puts Machitsky 8th. Next target, Morgan Tilbrook in the Enduro Motorsport car. Morgan Tilbrook only started racing, period, a year or so ago. He had never sat in a racing car until, I think, the start of the 2020 season. And here, or 2019 season it might have been, and here he is now in British GT, his first ever race stint, remember, because he never got a racing lap in at Brands Hatch, and he's running in 7th place. He's got multiple champion Andrew Howard ahead of him. He's got the rapid Leo Machitsky arriving on his tail. That's going to be a battle worth watching. So too is this, though. Richard Neary on the tail now of Adam Ballon for 2nd place. So Adam Ballon in the Lamborghini hanging on, but for how much longer?
That Mercedes is so beautifully balanced. Look at his inputs, how smooth they are. He's not having to fight the car at all. And at this stage in a stint, that is fantastic because the tyres have had a seriously hard time. And he's just closing in. There seems an inevitability about this.
Yeah, there does really, doesn't there? Richard, of course, shares this car with his son, Sam Neary, Super Sam, as I've dubbed him, because he too is very inexperienced at racing. Sam Neary only started racing in 2019, so similar to Morgan Tilbrook, actually, came straight into GT racing with his father in this Mercedes, racing in Britcar and a couple of other championships, made the move up into British GT last year and was instantly on the same sort of pace as the Yelmer Bourbons of the world. Sam Neary, who will jump in this car relatively shortly, you'd imagine, could well jump into the 2nd place car if his dad gets a move on here, because he's right on the tail of Ballon. But of course now he's got stuck, and so Petrobelli is starting to get back towards them. So when you're in Richard Neary's situation here, Marino, and you've been stuck behind Ballon for a while, you did have a bit of breathing room over Petrobelli, but that gap is shrinking. The frustration just starts to build, and that's when sometimes you go for a move that maybe you shouldn't have done.
Yeah, it's hard when you've made that move and you've passed the guy already, and you can see him coming back to you because you can't make the move. He's in the pit lane. Yeah, that's a good idea. Get him out of that hole that he's in. Hopefully, good pit stop, and then his son can start making some more ground up. Fantastic stint, though. I think that was a great start to the race for him.
Well, he started 10th, and he was staring down the barrel of 2nd place, wasn't he, when he came in? So really good effort that from Richard Neary. Makes up, I think, for his spin in practice, which robbed Sam of any running in practice. Across the 2 60-minute practice sessions yesterday, Sam Neary completed 2 laps.
That must have been a quiet run home in the car.
I don't think he was best. Well, actually, no. When I saw Sam in the pit lane, he had a smile on his face, but he always does. He's a teenager after all.
How special is this to be able to go racing a Mercedes GT3 car with your dad around Silverstone? That is a dream. That's fantastic.
And they're not the only ones doing it, because the Proctors, of course, Stuart and Lewis Proctor, another father-son team. Stuart Proctor is running in 12th place at the moment. There are the leaders then. Hunter Abbott now has a nearly 15-second cushion over Adam Ballon in 2nd, with, of course, Petrobelli inheriting 3rd after Richard Neary makes the pit stop. So Neary, the first of the front-running GT3 cars to stick the pro driver in. It's the AMs, remember, that have to start the race. Kelvin Fletcher, I can tell you, also came in the Bentley. So Martin Plowman is about to jump in. And also Nick Jones has just brought the 66 Team Parker Racing Porsche in to hand over to Scott Malvern. But Hunter Abbott, I don't suspect, is in any great rush to pit here, because he looks seriously comfortable out there. This big lead that he's built up now, they can afford to leave him out there. And when you have a quick AM, which they have in the shape of Hunter Abbott, that just gives you that extra bit of strategic freedom, because you're not in a rush to get them out of the car and get the quick driver in.
No, you can just go with the best strategy. You don't have to think about, right, let's get this guy out. It might not be quite the right time, but the time that we're going to gain on track is going to more than make up for it. They don't have to worry about that. I mean, he's disappeared at the moment. He's so far up the road.
Yes, I'm just looking actually in the program. They're listed as a silver AM combo rather than a pro AM, so we might just get that confirmed if we can. because I did wonder about the driver gradings maybe of Hunter and Martin. But anyway, Hunter Abbott in the car for now. Sam Neary, though, is in the number 8 car, so he is going to come out of Copse Corner now, just behind a little group of GT4 traffic, but with not a single other GT3 car around him. So he's got some nice clean air, and they're going for that undercut strategy, aren't they, to try and clear the number 1 Barwell Lamborghini. In theory, Sam Neary should only need a lap or two, and they should be able to leapfrog the Lamborghini into second.
So they have tyre warmers here today. They have the tyre tent, so out on hot tyres, he should have good grip, just waiting for some of that pressure to build. Stay off the curbs to, until they come up to temperature. But he's racing an imaginary car at the moment. He's got to push, use these new tyres to their maximum without compromising later in the stint, and hopefully once the pit stops are finished, he will be in front. That's what he is trying to do.
Now, it seems like an obvious strategy: get your quicker driver in as soon as you can, leapfrog past the other AMs, but those that are leaving their AMs out for longer, they're buying themselves more time later in the race that they can use their pro. So it is a balancing act. Sometimes it's a short-term gain, but maybe a long-term loss. The idea is that they get enough time back now that they don't so much have to worry about it later in the race. But there are always two sides to their strategy story, aren't there?
I think it's 100 minutes maximum in the race that your pro's allowed to do. So they're just calculating off that and trying to work it into their strategy, because what you don't want to do is get to your final pit stop and you've still got to you've got to get your AM some more track time. I've seen that before where it doesn't quite work out and then you're having to throw the AM back in. It can really mess up your race.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where late safety cars and things can throw the strategy out the window as well. Right, battle between Machitsky and Tilbrook there about to kick off. There is Sam Neary. So Sam Neary, having jumped into the car, it was his father Richard that put in one of the stints of the race there in the first 45 minutes or so, and he's down in the pit lane now with Bryn Lucas.
Yes, I am indeed. A very happy dad. Richard, that was a really solid performance. 10th to 3rd. You were so close on the back, weren't you?
Yeah, we're really pleased. We've got the car quite well hooked up here. We didn't think we qualified in our true position. I thought an honest position for us yesterday was round about 5th, but really pleased to get to 3rd. Yeah, good job. Let's just see what Sam can do now.
Well, the Mercedes seem to be really hooked up around here when you compare them to like the Lamborghini or the McLarens.
The McLarens are mega quick in a straight line. They're hard work to deal with. Yeah.
But Sam's now got just to keep his nose clean.
Yeah, I mean, Sam's got to carry on and try and pick 1 or 2 off and see where we get to. You know, it's a long race, isn't it?
Yeah, well, good luck.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, pick 1 or 2 off. He's only got 2 to pick off, hasn't he, really? Ballon, who they're trying to undercut, and Hunter Abbott, who has this now 16-second lead. Machitsky is in. If Richard Neary wasn't the driver of the race so far, I think Leo Machitsky might be. Yes, it was his spin that put them in that position in the first place, but he has fought back beautifully, well inside the top 10, and now Dennis Lynn jumps on board, and we know he's quick.
I had a team manager that would always say it's all in the recovery. It doesn't matter what's happened, it's how you recover from it. And he had recovered beautifully there and really put them in with a shout of a great result. If they have a yellow, they're going to be right back up the front.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. Their teammate car, the number 1 car, still running in 2nd place, but Adam Ballon has never had a moment to rest in this stint. Every time he looks in his mirror, there's someone filling them, and at the moment it's Giacomo Petrobelli in the TF Sport Aston Martin. Remember, Petrobelli in the Aston Martin, Abbott out in front. They are race-by-race entries, so they don't score championship points. In that respect, actually, the Ballon-Neary battle was essentially the battle for the race lead, because if a race-by-race entry wins the race and a full-season entry is second, then the second-place car scores first-place points, which is 37.5 points in an endurance round of the championship for a race victory. We'll get into that in more detail in the final half hour or so, but that's something else as a driver you have to factor in, isn't it? If you're racing with someone that you know isn't scoring championship points, don't get too involved with them.
Not at this stage, but when it comes down to the final laps of the race, and if you have the chance to go for a great result or to go for the win and to win the Tourist Trophy, you're not going to care whether it's a full season, part season, whatever it is, you're going to go for the win, because that's, you know, us drivers all have egos and we all want to win. It doesn't matter what the point situation is.
Mike Ligo's ego has possibly been done some good in this stint, because he's another driver who has made good progress from a lowly grid position, both himself and, interestingly, Phil Keane really struggled in their sessions. I think they were 16th in each of their sessions, which meant they started 16th. Remember, 2 qualifying sessions for each class. One driver does one session, the other driver does the other. They then combine those times to give you their grid positions, but neither Phil or Michael were quick yesterday. It's not a good track for the car, we know, and actually it's not Michael's favourite track either. Phil Keane was telling me yesterday Michael's quite looking forward to getting back to the Donington Parks and Alton Parks on the calendar. Silverstone not his favourite, but you know, you can't really let that come into it, can you? If there's a chance to get up there and score some points, doesn't matter whether you enjoy a track. Did you ever find that though, that tracks you didn't really enjoy were generally the ones you weren't always all that quick at?
Yes, especially when I was younger, but you have to learn to just get on, treat them all the same. Of course, there's ones where you just know that you love the experience of driving them more. But when you've only got 7 rounds, I think, in this championship, you have to make the most of every single race. And I think you see the Ballon cars running up the front, so the Lamborghini's capable of doing it, and we'll see what Phil does when he gets in the car, because he is obviously blisteringly quick usually.
Yeah, he usually is, but remember they've got 20 seconds to serve at their final stop, so it's an uphill struggle for them right to the end. Second place battle getting pretty tasty now in traffic there. Ballon was a little bit offline. Petrobelli almost got a chance to get up the inside, but then the traffic sort of impeded him coming out of Luffield corner as well. This is the fight for second place, but somewhere in amongst all of this will fall Sam Neary once these two come in and pit. We've had in GT3 only, I think, 3, maybe 4 GT3 cars that have pitted. Martin Plowman is the highest place of those, having just overtaken Dennis Lind, although that's because Lind is on his outlap. So Plowman down in 12th, fastest lap of the race for him. That is the highest placed GT3 car that's pitted. Petrobelli up the inside of Ballon into Stowe corner. You've really got to commit to that move, haven't you? And he just wasn't quite close enough.
No, he wasn't. I think he knew that, but he's just trying to fill the mirrors of Ballon and make him make some kind of mistake. And we were just talking about Sam Neary there. He's putting in some really good lap times, and I think if he continues the speed, showing the speed that he's got, I think he'll be quite close to the front. His outlap was a strong outlap, so we shall see where he ends up.
Scott Malvern.
Wow, Malvern. Crikey.
That's done my OCD the world of good. He has set the new fastest lap, Scott Malvern, 2 minutes 0.000. I don't think I've ever seen that happen before.
That is impressive, isn't it?
Really quick lap as well. I mean, that is about a 10th quicker than Plowman had gone. We haven't really talked about the Porsches. There are 2 out there. Obviously, there's the Seamus Jennings-Greg Caton car, which is an all-AM entry. But Nick Jones and Scott Malvern, quick drivers, the pair of them. Scott Malvern in particular, very, very experienced. Is it a big, I don't know whether you have any experience of, oh, there they were, in fact, right on cue. Do you have any experience of racing rear-engine cars? Is it something that is uniquely difficult to wrap your head around as a driver?
Porsches they're now at a stage in their evolution where they don't feel massively different, but they still have their idiosyncrasies. And I was very lucky from the moment I jumped in a 911 race car. It just suited me the way that the balance was. And it's very interesting that the weight, obviously the fuel tank is out the front, and it's less of an issue now, but the balance of the car really changes as you go through a stint, as the weight comes off the front end. We just got a nice little wave there. He obviously knew that we were talking about him. I just love that noise, and I love that cockpit. I'm a big Porsche fan, so it's one of my happy places, that.
Looks good as well through those tight corners, of course, all that weight over the rear axle.
It's definitely working well at the moment, looking at the speed that he's going.
Yes, it is, indeed. He is the fastest man out on track now.
Ballon into the pits.
And Sam Neary. Now that's
a problem.
Yeah, I haven't seen any news of a penalty, so why is Sam Neary in the pit lane? You just caught a glimpse of that on the timing tower.
I think that your co-commentator got it wrong, and actually Neary'd done a 2:24, so I wonder if there had been a problem on that outlap.
Okay, yes, yeah, so I assumed that was the outlap, but now I think back, I don't think it was. I think that was his first flying lap.
They're looking at something on the rear of the car, right rear tyre. They're going into the pits, so they're putting the trolleys under the car.
What a shame. It was looking so good for them, wasn't it? And ironically, they come into the pit lane just at the point they were about to inherit second place, look, because Ballon is in now to hand over to reigning champion Sandy Mitchell. It was all about to fall into their lap. We will send Bryn Lucas down there so that he can, if I can see him there, he's trying to figure out exactly what the problem is. But let's hope it's a quick fix. As you say,
doesn't look like it, the way that they're working on the car.
There it goes, look into the garage.
Such a shame. Seeing Sandy Mitchell's car there and seeing the Tunnocks sticker on it, the caramel wafers. That's making me quite hungry, actually.
Yes, racing teams should not be allowed to run with food sponsorship. It makes us poor commentators rather peckish. Scott Malvern going even quicker now, by the way. 1:59.847 is the first sub 2-minute lap of the race. Pole position, by the way, was a 50. Hang on, it was a 59, wasn't it? So they're getting down to qualifying pace now. There goes the leader, Hunter Abbott, in traffic now. That is actually that all-AM Porsche that I was talking about. It's being driven at the moment by Seamus Jennings because they haven't yet stopped. And it looks to me as though they're going to go as long as possible with that 2C's car. Back into the race goes Sandy Mitchell, but Hunter Abbott, 23 seconds or so clear now. And now that Sam Neary has had to pit again, they really are looking good, aren't they?
They really are. Abbott is he's like a metronome at the moment. The pace that he's able to maintain through traffic, very, very impressive. Be interesting to see how they work this strategy, the 2C's guys. They're obviously pushing this first stint as far as they can, and you certainly would if you could, because the pace of the car is still fantastic. They've obviously got a lovely balance, great speed. I do like the paint scheme on that. I think it looks very, very cool.
Now, Sam Neary is staying in the car. That's sometimes a good sign, isn't it?
I'm going to say gearbox problem just by the way that they're...
Right. Well, we think...
Looks...
Okay, we think Bryn Lucas might have a little bit of news for us on this, so let's head down there. Bryn, what have you got?
Yeah, I've just spoken to the team. They say they use a compressed air gearbox, basically. They have compressed air in their gearbox. They believe they've got a link, or they have some kind of problem with the air pressure itself. And Richard Neary's working on the car with the mechanics right now.
Right, okay, so that was 1 point to me for getting the strategy for Barwell, right? 1 point to you, Marino, for guessing what the issue was.
When you're on board on these cars and you hear them going into corners and the engine, the revs are low, you hear like a in the background, and that's the air compressor charging up. So it compresses the air fires a little solenoid which moves the gears up and down. And I've had that break before, and if it loses pressure, it's not going to shift gear, and that's obviously what's happened to them there.
So frustrating. I mean,
it's crazy as well in a short race with these cars. It'll do over 30 hours.
Yeah. And as a driver, you can kind of stomach it. If it's your mistake and you know what happened, you can almost stomach that a bit more easily than the car letting you down. But unfortunately, it's just something that happens. There's Ollie Milroy, by the way, out of the contention for the race now, but running quickly. Dennis Lind there goes up the inside of Morgan Tilbrook. Again, not for position, but that is a car that they're racing for position in reality. Once the McLaren pits, these two should be close together. Lind is lapping, where is he? Oh, he's just on the fastest lap at 59.7. So yeah, Dennis Lind living up to his billing here. What do you think, though? Is this strategy working? He's got clean-ish air, and he certainly looks quicker at the moment than the cars with which he'll be racing once they stop.
I think we'll find out in about 2 hours and 3 minutes. It's just at the moment it's about staying out of trouble and maximising the pace of the car. But Dennis Lind has got in the car and he's flying. I think... I would have thought that Leon Machitsky had really bad flat spots during that whole stint after the spin, yet was able to do a fantastic job and to come through the field so well. I will say the 3C's car has 2C's cars has such pace. It's going to take a lot for them to be beaten. They've got to get their strategy right, but they have the pace, I would say, at the moment over a stint to win the race.
Yes, but for Barwell Motorsport in particular, as I've said, if it turns out in the last half an hour that they simply can't catch 2Cs, as the inside of Andrew Howard there goes Leo Machitsky, again, not for position, he's unlapping himself essentially from the Aston. But yeah, if we get to the final stint and 2Cs Motorsport are 30 seconds ahead and you're not going to catch them, settle for second if you're a championship contender, as Barwell are, because...
that's such... It looks like they're going to have to retire the car. You can just see the disappointment on the young man's body language there. He just absolutely gutted. There's nothing worse getting all revved up and you get out there from the pit stop, you don't even really get a proper flying lap. Yeah, so hard.
And it really, they had high hopes. Richard said that he knew the car was quick. They sort of benefited from other people's misfortune. There's Richard.
Richard looked to me like he had pace in his pocket. He was not pushing the car. You could just see it was all very comfortable. I just feel so bad for them because they were absolutely flying.
Well, that's motorsport, I suppose, but it's definitely the heartbreaking side of motorsport. But they'll bounce back next time, I'm sure. Again, they'll have no success penalty when we go to Donington Park, so I guess they might be able to use that to their advantage. Right, Martin Plowman is now the second highest placed driver who has pitted. He's 2 seconds behind Dennis Lind, so that is a genuine battle for position. GT4 still being led by Will Burns from Matt Cowley by 9.9 seconds. Jordan Collard is still third. Chris Salkeld still fourth. None of them, in fact, I tell a lie, Collard has just dived for the pit lane. So Collard, the first of the front-running GT4 cars to make his first stop. The highest placed GT4 car up till that point that had pitted was Senan Fielding in the Audi. And in fact, we've got Chris Salkeld in as well. Right then, this is probably a conversation Bryn Lucas doesn't want to have, but he's down at the Team ABBA pit garage with a dejected Sam Neary.
Yeah, I think dejected is the exact word I'd use. Sam, just gutting for you both.
Yeah, definitely. Rich had an amazing first stint, got us into third position, and we thought the car was running well. We had great pace, and then just have a gear shift issue. It just wouldn't change gear on me. It got stuck in third, and it got stuck in second the lap before, and it's game over, unfortunately.
Did you have any clues before that there might be a problem?
No, nothing. I got a warning on the dashboard, which I cleared, and then next thing you know, it's stuck in gear. It's one of those things, it's racing, it's just a bit gutting for the whole team, so bit of a shame.
Yeah, onwards and upwards for the next round.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, you can hear the emotion in his voice there, really, can't you? He is very, very upset about that, but they should go well at Donington. They've gone well there in the past, so we look forward to seeing them next time out. Right, GT4, there is a flurry of activity here. Every single GT4 car has pitted apart from the top two. There is the leading GT4 car, and that is the number 57 of Will Burns, who won the race, as I said, last time at Brands Hatch. They're still not pitting, and we are now pretty much bang on 60 minutes in. So I said earlier on, didn't I, there's this choice of when you do the long stints, when you do the short stints, and they have decided that they're going to go at least to the full 1 hour mark at the start of the race. But Cowley, I can see, has just pitted from second place.
They're still lapping the BMW there within 1.2 seconds of the best time. So the pace is still there at the end of the stint, which bodes well for them later on.
That's in Loggy being unlapped by Dennis Lind. You can see the gap that he's pulled on the likes of Andrew Howard, for example, Morgan Tilbrook, with whom this car was battling earlier on. But for every lap that he does in the car now, that's 1 lap less that he can do in his second stint later on. So this could all still come back to them. This is why we say this race will only become clear inside the final 20 minutes or so, because that's when the final stops have been made, the penalties, the success penalties have been served. At the moment, it looks good for this 63 car, but they could lose out later.
They could. He's flying at the moment, though. He's just on the fastest lap of the race again, a 59.3. And he's pulled out that gap between him and Plowman on the last lap to 3.7 seconds. So it's the car's obviously in a really nice spot with balance, and he's just carried on the good work that we saw from the first stint. It's an amazing recovery, really, when you think about that for that 63 car. I mean, it was spinning through the field in the first lap, and to be back where they are is very, very impressive.
Yeah, that really was. They could so easily have ended up in the barriers and out the race, of course, so very lucky to carry on at all. Right, the Toyota has been into the pit lane to serve a driver change, tyre change and refuel, and a little bit of housework. They've got rid of that mirror, so at least that's one less thing for them to worry about now for the rest of the race.
Nicely snipped off there.
Yes, efficient work there from the pit crews. And you know, the pit crews, they practice their pit stops, they practice tyre changes, refueling, driver changes, maybe basic maintenance on the car, but adding an extra element like that into the pit stop is not something they'll have practiced before. So I know there is no real rush because of these minimum pit stop times, but yeah, still efficient work from them to get that done. 10-second penalty here. Car number 56. Now 56. Oh, no, it's the Ginetta, of course it is. It is Mark Sanson. So this is a pit lane infringement. It's actually not Mark anymore in the car, is it? It is Charlie Robertson. This team, I think these two have walked under far too many ladders, and they've come across too many black cats in the last few weeks, because they had that late puncture at Brands Hatch, a penalty now as well for an unnamed pit lane infringement. Could be anything, speeding, you could be below that minimum pit stop time. But that is a real disaster for them. They were starting to look like they could be in that podium fight.
It certainly was. I really wish we could know what the pit lane infringement is. If it's, is it contact with some equipment, too many people working on the car? I'd be very interested to know that.
Yeah, we'll see if we can find some info on that. Possibly Bryn Lucas can find out for us. There is the 38 Aston Martins. This is the car that was in second place. Now, Giacomo Petrobelli is getting out of the car. He will hand over to Charlie Eastwood, who's a very rapid driver, been doing quite a lot of racing with TF out in Europe in recent years. Remember, that car was dicing with the #1 Lamborghini, so we'll need to see where they come out in relation to one another. Through Club Corner, here comes the other TF Sport car, as in, at long last, comes the race leader. Hunter Abbott thinks, right, the thing's nearly out of fuel, the tyres are almost worn down to the canvas. Maybe I'll let Martin Kodrich have a go now.
He really did get the most out of that set of Pirellis, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, these Pirellis, they're good, aren't they? They will last the full hour pretty easily, but as durable as the tyres are, you are going to have less grip after 60 minutes than you had after a couple of minutes at the start. So, you know, the fuel load's coming off, that makes things a little bit easier, but to keep the consistent pace that they had, I mean, they were still, up until that in-lap, running in the 2-minute 2s, I think, pretty comfortably, even in traffic. That is really, really impressive long-run pace. James Cotton in as well.
And a good in-lap as well by Abbott. He did his highest top speed on the straight on the in-lap, so he was obviously pushing everything. So, James Cottingham here. More a historic racer, but is now jumping into the modern cars. We've raced quite a lot together at Goodwood and some other tracks, and he's very, very fast. Their family business, DK Engineering, selling all these lovely cars that we see here. They sell some of those and all the lovely historic cars that we race at Goodwood.
Yeah, it was a bit of a revelation at Brands Hatch, actually, was James Cottingham in his first ever modern GT race, and unfortunately his race ended with contact with this car, the #1, which at the time was being driven by Adam Ballon. Now it's Sandy Mitchell in the car, and unfortunately that put paid to both of those cars' chances of fighting for any points at the season opener. So with Abbott in, we're now just waiting for Ian Loggy, Andrew Howard, Morgan Tilbrook and Bonamy Grimes to pit from GT3. In GT4, I think it's only the lead of Will Burns who has yet to stop, so they are going really deep into this race. They're going to go pretty much now. I mean, a full fuel load in these things, what, 70 minutes-ish? So they're really now pushing it, aren't they?
They certainly are, especially when you take the warm-up laps into the factor those in as well. We just saw Sandy Mitchell there unlapping himself from Loggy, and he's obviously, the pace for Loggy's dropping off a little bit now into 2:03s that last lap versus his best lap of a 2:01.1. So he's obviously getting towards the end of the fuel loads. Tyres maybe giving up a little bit. I don't think he's quite got the balance that the Hunter Abbott car has. It's interesting that we got Mr. Howard up into second.
Yeah, we think, Marino, that this car now, number 63, could, once this all settles out, be in second place. Because look, there is Martin Kodrich. We know he's going to have the lead, surely. Dennis Lind, there are no cars between them, and everyone that should have been between them has pitted. So if that 63 car, an hour and 10 minutes into this race, is in second place, what, 5 seconds off the lead? I will be astonished, but that seems to be the case.
He is setting a relentless pace at the moment. He's so fast, and it would not surprise me if he's right up into the fight for the lead once we've run through this pit stop sequence.
Yeah, the timing screen will update at the end of this lap, and then we'll give you the proper rundown. There, look in the background, Martin Plowman. He is the third highest placed car we think that's pitted. So somewhere there, Sandy Mitchell and Adam Ballon have lost ground. They pitted later, of course, didn't they? Quite a bit later than the sister car. That graphically demonstrates the pace advantage that the pro drivers had. That is because Dennis Lind has had an extra, 15 minutes in the car to do some damage and get this gap. That was the whole point of that early pit stop.
It's worked very, very well for them, hasn't it? The 63 pitted on lap 22. We're now lap 32, so 10 laps he's been out there, and he's been making hay while the sun doesn't shine here at Silverstone.
Yes, the cool, overcast conditions clearly suiting Dennis Lind, though. Well, let's see then. The timing screen will now update. We're still waiting for the top 4 to pit, so 5th place should be Martin Kodrich, but he is the net leader because he's the highest placed car that has now made its first mandatory stop. And yeah, Dennis Lind, 1.6 seconds behind. Now, you actually gave a readout of the gap between Machitsky and Abbott as it was earlier on. It was
24 seconds at that point, and it got up to about 30 seconds. So
that's incredible.
That's incredible. It's just
That is pit strategy being, it's pit strategy being worked to perfection, and it's Dennis Lin doing what Dennis Lin does best, getting in the car and bang, straight onto the pace. Now, we have a fight for the race lead. Will he be able to get past Martin Kodrich, do you think?
Well, Kodrich is just in the car, just out of the pit, so he's still finding his feet, feeling the balance of the car, new tyres, full of fuel. He's going to have a job to keep him behind, I'd say.
I think so. Right then, game on. I mean, 20 minutes or so ago, we'd almost given this race to 2 Seas Motorsport. We should have known better, Marino, with still 2 hours to go. And here we are, look, a second now in it between the top 2 drivers that have made their pit stop. Tilbrook and Grimes are in as well now. So through go Kodrich and Lin then. This is essentially the battle for the race lead once the others have stopped. We also, though, have an actual fight for the race lead because Ian Loggy and Andrew Howard, the last 2 drivers not to have stopped, are, we believe, pretty close together out on circuit somewhere. Morgan Tilbrook and Bonamy Grimes are pitted from 3rd and 4th, so they should drop behind those 2. There is your new race leader, Ian Loggy. He and Andrew Howard, just there in the background, both owe us a pit stop. But this, in itself, Marino, is a pretty tasty battle.
It is. Johnny Adam did not steer me wrong. He said that their car was very good over the long runs, and it's showing that. Andrew Howard right up into 2nd place. He made some progress early in the stint, but as it's gone on, he's obviously just finding more and more pace. And if you look at the moment, he's only 0.7 off his best lap time, and they've been running for 1 hour and 10 minutes now, and he's still so close to his ultimate pace. That shows a very well balanced car.
Yes, indeed. Loggy's coming in and Howard's coming in, so the race on the track now becomes a race in the pit lane, although both of these should spend the same amount of time in the pits. And Andrew Howard a bit later on the brakes there for that pit entry. Johnny Adam will be getting into the Aston Martin. Jelmer Berman getting into the Mercedes. I mean, I will always buy a ticket for a Jelmer Berman Johnny Adam shootout.
Certainly will too. That's going to be very exciting for us. Let's see how the pit crews do, because while it's timed, you've still got to get everything right and get your sequencing correct and not make any mistakes. We've seen some penalties already in the pits from pit stop issues.
On that, actually, I've had some news from Bryn that the 56 car, it was for an extra person working on the car during the pit stop, although the team are disputing it apparently. So more news on that as and when we get it. Right, here we come then. Kodrich and Kodrich and Lind nose to tail. We expect these 2 to take over 1st and 2nd positions outright now that the Loggy Mercedes and the Howard Aston Martin have pitted. That will happen in half a lap or so. Lin just looking to the inside again, just trying to distract the Mercedes, and you can kind of take a tight line there into Village without really compromising your exit speed too much. So 2 completely different cars, front-engine Mercedes, mid-engine Lamborghini. We've touched already upon where the Lamborghini and the Mercedes respectively are strong, but where does Lind make the moves? On the brakes,
anywhere he can. It was interesting going into Abbey there. You could see the rear wing on the Lamborghini shaking from side to side, and that's just the wake, the air, the dirty air, the downforce sapping dirty air coming off the Mercedes.
Here they come, nose to tail, out of the final corner. He's well and truly in that dirty air from the Mercedes now, because there's only a car length in it. Out across the start-finish line they go then. They reclaim positions 1 and 2. And Martin Kodrich has Dennis Lin looking up the inside into Copse Corner. Can't quite do it there. And that time the tight line on the entry did compromise him. But Lind feels quite confident to do that, to just have a little look, even if it compromises his exit speed, because he's got the pace to get back there again.
He seems to be able to position the car where he wants on the track and not cost himself very much time. So he's still got to get it done though. I mean, he's at the moment, the Mercedes has a tyre life advantage over the Lamborghini. So each lap that he sits behind, the chances of him overtaking become less and less.
Very good point. That's the other negative, I guess, to making the early pit stop, is that when everyone else stops, they've got fresher tyres than you. Although we're not seeing a huge drop-off in pace, but there is a certain drop-off in performance with tyres as you get into the stint. GT4, by the way, has now seen a pit stop for the race-leading BMW at the same time as the 57 BMW pitted. The 42 Audi, which was about to either inherit the lead or fall into 2nd place in class, is making its 2nd stop. So they have gone for 2 short, sharp, sort of 35-minute stints at the start of the race, and they're maybe going to do some longer stints later on, so that will be an interesting one to track. Back to the lead battle, though. Dennis Lind could not be any closer to Martin Kodrich.
Purple, fastest middle sector for Lind on this lap. Kodrich's set his fastest middle sector as well, but just not quite as fast as the Lamborghini. The Lamborghini definitely has a pace advantage right now, but can he get the move done? That is the question.
Yes, because in the first sector, he was 4/10 slower than Kodrich when he had that little look up the inside into Kopp's corner. He's already got that back, and he's right back on the tail of the Mercedes, and through these tight corners now at the end of the lap, surely is where Lind will have the edge. He goes up the inside of Kodrich to the Luffield corner. Kodrich cannot close the door. They are wheel to wheel for the lead of the race. We're an hour and a quarter into the Silverstone 500, and it could not be any closer. Dennis Lind on the inside line, Kodrich on the outside, and Lind has done it. Dennis Lind, after a spin for his teammate Liam Machitsky on the opening lap of the race, put them to the back of the GT3 field. Just over an hour later, they hit the front.
That's a very impressive comeback from the issues of the first lap. The car, he was just able to use the tighter line there at Luffield to get the move done. That's so impressive. Again, he has more miles on the tyres, but it doesn't seem to be making any difference at this point in the stint. He's just got all the grip that he needs, he's got the balance, and he's able to place that Lamborghini anywhere that he wants right now.
Yeah, you could just see he could take a tighter line through Luffield, and look at the way he's getting away now as well. Dennis Lind in the first sector alone was a full second quicker than Martin Kodrich, so that gap is already starting to grow. Right, now that that's dealt with, let's take a look back in the pack then. Lind leads the way from Kodrich. They're 5.6 seconds ahead of Martin Plowman in third. Sandy Mitchell is fourth, a further 5.7 seconds back, and Charlie Eastwood fifth is 13 seconds behind them. Then it's Yelmer Berman in sixth position, 11 seconds back, 2.7 ahead of Johnny Adams. So that looks like Ram Racing definitely did the better in that little pit stop battle. Adams still seventh. Marcus Clutton is eighth for Enduro Motorsport. Ninth position is Sam DeHaan in the 69 Ram Racing Mercedes. And Scott Malvern, another early stopper, remember, is 10th in the Porsche. Phil Keen 11th, Ewan Hankey 12th, and Lewis Proctor 13th. And that is the battle we're watching here. Actually, you've got Phil Keen 11th, Hankey, the red and black McLaren, is 12th, and Lewis Proctor in 13th place. So Phil Keen not really setting the world alight at the moment, is he?
It's very strange, isn't it? They just don't seem to have the pace of the other 63 Lamborghini this weekend. And we know Phil was absolutely dynamite. He's just always, no matter what type of car he's in, historic, modern, he's always the front runner. And they've obviously got some kind of inherent issue this weekend that they just cannot fix.
Battle here between Scott McKenna in the Toyota, Gordon Colebrook in the number 9 Century Motorsport BMW. Now, this is the fight for 1, 2, 3, either third or fourth. It depends where. It should be fourth, I think, because Darren Turner, after jumping into the 27 Aston Martin quite early, has managed to leapfrog this little group, and Darren Turner is now running potentially second place in GT4 behind Gus Burton, who we do expect to come back out with the class lead. But remember, the 42 Audi has made an extra pit stop, so that is now Richard Williams back in the Stellar Motorsport Audi. This, though, is a great little battle, isn't it? BMW versus Toyota, and up the inside, look, goes that battle we were just talking about between Keen, Hankey and Proctor. And this is really tricky for the GT4 drivers. You're having your own race, you're having your own battle, and suddenly these GT3 cars arrive on the scene and upset your rhythm.
You have to have eyes in the back of your head, and he's missing one of his cameras because we saw them take the mirror off earlier. It was a great onboard view there. You can see how the difference between the GT3 and the GT4, the extra downforce of the GT3 means it's much smoother, much less input. The GT4, the car's dancing around and moving around more, and that was one thing that as we mentioned earlier, that Darren Turner said. And I have been giving Darren a little bit of abuse that he hasn't won a British GT race yet, and he tells me he hasn't done enough for that to be a problem, but maybe he can sort that one out today.
Well, he's got the pace, hasn't he? And Matt Topham, to be honest, once he sort of settled into that first stint, also looked pretty handy. So, yeah, wouldn't bet against it just now. In GT4 then, just to run you down that order now, Gus Burton has rejoined after his pit stop in the class lead.
Sorry, just while we've been away, yes. I can see on the timing screen that Hankey has passed Keen.
Yeah,
and they were fastest in the morning warm-up. And obviously Mia had that issue on the first lap, but she's kept the pace well during that first stint, and they're still in the fight on the lead lap.
Yes, they are, actually. Again, they're just looking for a safety car, though, because they are over a minute behind the race leader. Scott McKenna there has a little look at the inside, and actually that forces the mistake, doesn't it? Out of the BMW ahead, Andrew Gordon-Colebrook in Harriet's Chariot, being sponsored by Ainsley Harriet, who I believe was planning on being here, actually, this weekend to cheer the team on.
Don't talk about food again. I'm starving.
That's the thing, isn't it? You mention it once and you can't stop it.
What's interesting with the GT4 is it's not just about having a well-balanced car. You've got to be able to run different lines. Look at that with the Toyota. I don't think that's going to work out, but it's an interesting try.
Oh, well,
he's managed to hold himself there. Is he going to be able to get round the outside here, the first corner?
He's got his nose ahead.
Sorry, I keep saying first corner. I mean Abbey. Not the first corner this weekend. Oh, he's going to have this done. I think he's got the move done. He's now alongside. He's just got to hold the inside into this first hairpin. Look, the GT3 looking for a way past, but he's saying that you just got to wait a second till I get this done. Lovely move. That was what, 4 or 5 corners in the making? Fantastic.
Yeah, that's often how it works here at Silverstone. You set the move up quite a long way before you actually make it. Marco Sorensen, that was, by the way, coming through, who's taken over the 95 Aston Martin. Great to have Marco back in the championship.
WEC World Champion, Marco Sorensen. Yeah. Fabulous driver.
Pretty handy driver. Right, Johnny Adam is in 7th position. He seems to have got the better of Marcus Clutton for now. His co-driver, Andrew Howard, is out of the car and in the pit lane with Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, he's out of the car after a very, very long stint there, around 70 minutes, I think.
Yeah, we've you know, you can look at loads of different strategies. You're very much dependent on an early safety car, which we've had historically here. And the idea really for this race with weather and all sorts of things is to get the AM time done, get the pros out in clean track. And it's just worked really well. You're doing a little bit of fuel saving as well, which is all messing with my old head. But no, it's good, it's good.
Now, Johnny was saying before that the car's looking really good out there. It clearly is looking really good. Is it nice to drive? You said it's developed a lot over the last day or so.
Well, it's weird. We tested Friday and the car was like it was. Then we went yesterday and then quali, and the temperature has a massive impact, especially on the turbo cars. So we're just losing a little bit of front end. It's fine. You just got to change what you do. So you drive to a lap time. We do what we're doing, but we're just getting a little bit of understeer on new rubber, believe it or not. And once we get onto the old rubber, she's as good as gold.
Maybe Marino can tell us why that is. Andrew, thank you very much.
No problem, thank you.
Right then, so yeah, that's Johnny Adam there, sorry, Andrew Howard there then, handing over to Johnny Adam. So there are the top two then. Dennis Lynn leads the way. The next car is about Marker, but then you've got the Mercedes of Martin Kodrich. Then Martin Plowman in the Bentley is 3rd position. 4th place, Sandy Mitchell, the number 1 Lamborghini, and he is then 14.5 seconds ahead of Charlie Eastwood in the 38 TF Sport Aston Martin in 5th. In GT4, it is Gus Burton leading the way. Gus Burton in the 57 BMW has a 8.7 second lead over Darren Turner 2nd. 3rd place now for Will Moore in the Academy Ford Mustang, 11.7 seconds further back. He's 14.7 then ahead of the McKenna and Gordon Colebrook scrap, 4th and 5th in GT4 Toyota ahead of BMW. So things now settling down in this second stint then, Marino. Looking at the lap times though, 4th place Sandy Mitchell is quicker than 3rd place Martin Plowman, who's quicker than 2nd place Martin Kodrich. So it's all coming back together again.
Yeah, that's going to get exciting. But Lynn's managed to pull out a 5-second lead now. He's so consistent. His pace over the stint has been fantastic. Again, pointing to a well-balanced car. They're obviously using the tyres very consistently. There's Darren Turner getting surprised by GT3s again. He said it was very interesting. In the GT3 car, you don't feel like you're approaching the GT4s that quickly. But when it's reversed and you're in the GT4, those things come at you very, very fast.
Yeah, and of course, you don't always see them coming. At least the GT3s have the advantage of being able to look straight ahead and see the traffic, whereas the GT4s have to be watching ahead for their own race and behind for the quicker GT3 cars. There is Darren, though. I mean, it is great to have someone like Darren Turner back with us, you know, factory Aston Martin driver, success at Le Mans and all of the other big endurance races, touring car race winner as well, of course, a decade or so ago, Darren Turner, a proper talented driver. And actually,
one of the nicest men you'll ever meet.
He actually is. I met him for the first time yesterday, and I quite agree with that. But it's nice to have him in GT4. We're very used to these superstars, if you like, coming into the championship and naturally being plugged into a GT3 car. It's quite nice to see that talent in GT4 because it's a good benchmark then for the other GT4 teams to sort of aim for.
It really is. You can see exactly where you stand, especially as a young driver. think a lot of them that are now coming into GT4 and using it as a springboard to get in a GT3, they can say, well, look, you know, it was X amount. Here's my pace compared to Darren Turner's, and that's a real, as you say, a really good benchmark for these young drivers.
77 is Marcus Clutton. Now, I don't know whether you've come across Marcus before, Marina, but I still think he's one of the most criminally underrated pro drivers in the UK. Does a lot of club racing in things like the Fun Cup Endurance Championship, and very successful in that as well. But now, he's sort of dabbled with British GT a little bit in the past, but he met Morgan Tilbrook through his Fun Cup endeavours, and the Enduro Motorsport team compete in that championship. They've moved over to British GT. They've brought Marcus Clutton with them, and here is Marcus chasing down Johnny Adam. He was quicker on the previous lap by 4/10 than Johnny Adam, and now looks like he might be about to challenge for 7th place.
He's right on Johnny here, and Johnny is Mr. British GT. I don't think there's anyone more successful in the history of British GT than Johnny.
Certainly as far as championships, you're right, but
yeah,
of course...
I'm talking championships.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm not talking race ones, I'm just talking pure championships.
Tells me a lot about how you think, actually, that championships are far more important than race wins, which, of course, you're probably right with. Clutton up the inside, contact through the loop, and that was unfortunate, wasn't it? Hard to tell from that angle whether Johnny
we need to see
in.
that from a different angle. I think I would guarantee that Johnny was not expecting him to be there, but we need to see it from a different angle to be able to see whether the 77 car was able to maintain its line on the inside. It was an optimistic dive, but here we go, and just like that, they give us a different angle.
What do you think then? Oh, that was late, wasn't it?
That's late. It's late. You can see he's hit him in the rear wheel, and if he'd been on the outside and maintained that through that first part, he would have had the right to stick his nose there. But as you saw, the contact was with the rear of the car, and I think he obviously had a pace advantage over Johnny. He just had to be a wee bit more patient, I think. But he's obviously learning in these GT3 cars, and he's mighty fast, and I'm sure he'll learn from that and move on.
Unfortunately, he's not going very quickly now because he's brought the car immediately into the pit lane, so I'm guessing there's some damage to the right front quarter. I mean, it was quite a knock, that, wasn't it? What kind of things might that have broken?
Well, that will have bent the steering for sure. Like we talked about on the rear, where you have the toe control on the rear. The steering, especially there, when you hit a car with wheel-to-wheel contact like that and you're turning, so with your front wheel and the car's rear wheel, it can really bend things. If you hit wheel to wheel straight on, it's sometimes not so bad, but when you've got lock-in, it can damage the suspension, it can damage the steering rack. It can be a whole lot of problems.
So that incident, you won't be shocked to hear, is under investigation. We'll let you know when a decision is made for that one, but it takes Enduro Motorsport out of contention now. There's Dennis Lynn, but the fight for second is about to get quite tasty, I think. Martin Kodrich on the previous lap was 8/10 slower than Martin Plowman behind. Martin, I think by his own admission, did not have the greatest of stints at Brands Hatch. He jumped into the car and went off twice within the first few laps up at Sheen Curve. Today, though, we're seeing exactly what Martin Plowman is capable of. He's got the Bentley working well. It's a good circuit for that car, and he is now reeling Kodrich in, isn't he?
He certainly is reeling him in. Just to get back to that incident, on the last lap, Johnny Adam, that spin basically cost him 10 seconds, so that was a big loss for them as well. Yeah, Plowman has a pace advantage right now. He's closing in on Kodrich, and it's not going to be long before he can attempt to pass.
Yes, so Martin now
he's on the flashers, so everyone's on the flashers.
And we all know that's worth at least half a second a lap, isn't it, if you start flashing your lights. Does that distract you? I mean, I wouldn't expect a driver of your experience to be caught out by that, but can it distract a driver?
It can, especially at night. In the daytime, you're just like, oh, come on, give up.
And yet they still keep trying it, don't they?
One of the worst things for me was getting in a car where I didn't know that it was pre-programmed to flash for a certain time.
Oh.
So I was like hitting it like it was a repeat button, and I was possibly a little bit excited with that.
Yes. Right, they worked their way past Will Moore, third in GT4, sorry. Is Darren Turner catching Gus Burton? I meant to check this out a few laps ago. Oh, yes, absolutely. He's over a second a lap quicker than Gus Burton.
And he has been for a little while now. It's just been slowly catching up.
6 seconds the gap, so we'll monitor that. Give it another 5 or 6 laps, and they could be pretty close together. In fact, there have been a handful of GT4 cars that have made 2 pit stops, though I think a lot of them have had problems. Richard Williams in the 42 Audi is probably the only one that genuinely has made its 2 mandatory pit stops, down in 28th place. The GT3 field, though, just the 1 stop for all of the sort of 12 cars, 13 cars that have run relatively trouble-free so far. GT4 McLaren there.
That's interesting. They're going to investigate the car 7 and 77 incident we just saw after the race.
Okay. Well, sometimes they say that because they want to see the onboards, don't they? Obviously, they don't have any access to that mid-race, so...
Makes sense.
Yeah,
but it does mean a time penalty can change the result afterwards. So they don't want to do that, but I like that they're taking the time to properly investigate it.
Yeah, you'd rather they make the right decision than make a quick decision in a way, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Dennis Lind in the pit lane, by the way. Leader has just pitted, so that's interesting. We'll get to that in a moment, though, because we're seeing here the GT4 lead gap and how it's coming down. Darren Turner, another second, nearly 9/10 quicker that time than Gus Burton. 5.2 seconds the gap. Gus Burton, what a dream start to the season this has been for Century Motorsport. A slightly lucky victory at Brands Hatch, but they won here, remember, at the end of last year in the Silverstone 500. And Gus Burton, okay, he's not as quick as Darren Turner, but that Century BMW is definitely in the conversation for the GT4 victory again. Will Moore, by the way, in that Academy Mustang, 22 seconds behind these two. I've learned, though, Marino, not to count them out, because we saw in GT3 that a big lead can disappear over the course of one pit cycle, but those two at the moment, the class of the GT4 field.
Looking at the GT4s, it's interesting how well a car runs offline. If it's capable of running offline well, it seems to be faster overall in traffic.
Yes, right. Let's head down to the pit lane then, because in 3rd place at the moment is Martin Plowman. He's absolutely flying. How does his teammate Calvin Fletcher feel about that, Bryn?
Well, he's got his lid on, you can see, so Kelvin's about to get back in the car, but Plowy's putting in some decent times, isn't he?
Yeah, Plow's going really well. You know, the Bentley is inherently pretty strong around here, but we've, me personally, I've struggled this weekend. It's not quite clicked, so obviously a long race. My stint was all right, and Plowy's showing the true pace of the car now at the minute, so I'm going to get in for a slightly longer stint, and you know, as you know yourself, it'll unfold as it does throughout the race, so there's still all to play for.
Slightly different now because you've got your own Paddock Motorsport name on the car. Does that add the pressure on?
I mean, naturally, yes, you know, but we tried to come here as drivers this weekend. You know, yes, we're team owners. You know, unfortunately, there's been a bit of a unfortunate, you know, elsewhere as customers we were previously, but you know, I can't really comment on what's happened. But ultimately, an opportunity for us to, you know, to take the step up. Only 18 months ago, we were running Mazda MX-5s, you know, so to be here now running ourselves in the Bentley, you know, we're very proud of ourselves, and we've got the right personnel, we've kept the engineers, so there's a lot of continuity there. And like I said, this weekend we're trying to keep it simple and just focus on driving. But as a team owner, yeah, I'm extremely proud, and hopefully this will be the start of a long, you know, illustrious and successful career in GT in this paddock in particular.
Absolutely, well, it's a very eloquent answer. I do like it indeed. Do you want continuity with the team and continuity on track? So we wish you luck when you get out there.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
So, yeah, Kelvin's enjoying himself, isn't he?
He's annoyingly talented, isn't he?
He's just good at everything. He's one of those people you really hate, isn't he? He can act, he can present, he can dance, and he's pretty handy behind the wheel.
So annoying.
Great to have him here, though, and he and Plowy, as he said, this quite formidable pairing that they formed over the last few years now, even going into business together, which shows that they get on, and that's important, isn't it? Because your co-driver is not just a work colleague. You've got to have quite an intimate relationship, haven't you? You have to get on with them, I think. All of the real long-term partnerships you see in GT and sports car racing tend to be between people that are actually quite good mates off track as well.
You have to trust each other. It's a massive trust thing. It's good to be friends, but if you're not winning together, it can strain a friendship. But they have to have that respect and trust that when that other person's in the car, they're doing their best, that you trust that they're going to bring it back to you in the best condition possible.
Right then, Barwell Motorsports' Sandy Mitchell here in 3rd position. Is he gaining on those two? Yes, he is, isn't he? So Kodrich and Plowman on the previous lap about 3/4 of a second slower. What do you make, Marino, of the strategy call here for the 63? Because they put Leo Machitsky back in now. So Dennis Lind did less than an hour, I think, wasn't it? So
yeah, it was 20 laps.
20 laps.
Yeah.
45 minutes or so then. So what do you make of that? Is that the right call?
Ooh, Okay, so how long we got left? An hour 27. I think we'll know then. I do like it. I like that they will then be done with their AM. I think at that point, once they've gone through this stint, I would expect this will be the last time he's in the car. And Lynn's been flying. I mean, just absolutely flying. It is the fastest car by lap time. And I think they're putting themselves in a really good situation for the end of the race.
So they'll keep Machitsky in now, I reckon, until 55 minutes to go, right? Because Lynn's done 45-ish. He can't do more than 100, so he can do a maximum of 50 to 55 minutes in that last stint. So they only have to leave Machitsky in now for about a 35, 40-minute stint, and then they could stick Lind in early. And this was the strategy, actually, Phil Keane was talking to me about this yesterday. Those that have success penalties, they want their pro to be in for the full hour at the end of the race, because that gives them a full hour then to overcome the, in the case of 63, 10 seconds extra that they're going to lose in the pit stop. So actually, now I think about it, this is exactly the kind of strategy you would expect one of these teams that were on the podium last time to be doing.
It is. It'd be interesting to see if we throw a safety car into the mix, how that affects it all. But I mean, Machitsky's pace during that first stint was fantastic. So he was able to at least maintain the gap. He's obviously out there with a lot of pros now, so we will see how the gap develops between him and the leaders. But Lind was so fast, you kind of feel that there's not many gaps that he can't bridge at the moment.
Yes, so he goes past our commentary position as this second, third and fourth place cars go out of cops. They've sort of separated now, actually. Plowman is no longer catching Kodric. Kodric just did his personal best lap, actually, a 1:59.687. I think that's the first time that car has dipped below the 2-minute mark. Plowman then 1.7 seconds back now in P2. I did notice when we were watching Machitsky a second ago, not far behind him on track were the top two GT4 cars. They're pretty close together now, Burton and Turner, just 1.4 seconds. So that GT4 lead battle that we've been teasing for the last 10 minutes or so is, I think, on the verge of coming together properly now out on track, as Darren Turner, who is a full pro driver, let me remind you, is catching Gus Burton, who is a silver graded driver. So you would expect, there they are in fact, you would expect Turner to be quicker. Actually, it's been quite a strong stint, this, all things considered, for Burton.
It really has. It's about 8/10 a lap that Darren's been closing in, if you look at the average. Very impressive driving. And the BMW, again, they're very different cars. You've got a sort of more of a saloon type car there versus the Aston Martin sports car. But it's getting the job done. And it's, again, what we were talking about earlier, the GT4s that seem to be the most competitive are the ones that are able to maintain their lap time while running offline and allowing the GT3 cars to pass. And if you look on the outside of the track there, we're starting to get a lot of marbles, which starts to really affect the cars when they have to run offline at this point in the race.
I'm afraid Harry Hayek and Katie Milner aren't going to be running any line for a little while, because their car is being backed up into the garage, and the number 4 car then of Hayek and Milner that was 8th at Brands Hatch. It was, I think I'm right in saying, the better of the two McLaren drive development cars. Indeed it was. They unfortunately could be out of the race. Right, lead battle is on then. Turner has done the catching. Now he's got to do the passing. If you are Gus Burton, how hard do you fight this?
I don't think you're going to fight it too hard, because he's been closing so quickly. You don't want to get any contact or cause any issues, I would say.
Okay, well, let's see if he listens to you. Their nose to tail out of Luffield. We saw there Martin Plowman was in, handing over to Kelvin Fletcher then at the wheel of the number 11 Bentley. That was from second place, remember, overall. That's down into Cobb's Corner. Go, Gus Burton and Darren Turner. Darren Turner right on the boot lid now of the BMW. You're not going to get an overtake done through this next sequence of corners, so Darren's going to be focusing on getting through Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel as cleanly as possible, get that run down the hanger straight, and maybe attack down into Stowe.
You can see that offset as he's trying to just open it up more through that first part to get a run out here onto the hanger straight. he's going to get some more traffic as well, this GT3 traffic, and if the GT3 compromises the BMW, it could open it up for Darren. I think Darren's going to try and do it before that even gets there.
Oh, it's Hjalmar Berman closing, and well, he went to the outside, but in the end has to bail. And that's a great example, isn't it, of how it can really disrupt the GT4 battle, because Turner was just building up all of those laps of build up for the battle. It was just about to kick off, and then he has to bail out of it, but neither of them really lost any time there. They've ended up back exactly where they were, but less than a car length ahead of the Aston Martin, which is good out of club corner, just couldn't quite get to the inside.
And you can see Berman there when he thought about going to the outside of the BMW through Stowe, but he knows that BMW is going to need all the track on exit. It's not capable for that car to maneuver itself. It doesn't react as quickly, and it can't just change line like the GT3 can. So he decided the better idea was to move back to the inside on the exit of the corner.
Gus Burton, 57, being warned about track limits for the first time at turn 7, which I think is going to be Stowe corner, isn't it? Where he ran a little bit wide whilst Berman was lapping them right nose to tail again now through entry. Look how much curb Turner took on the inside.
Darren using all of the track there and a bit more.
That was the straightest line possible through there. He's up the inside now down the Wellington straight, and Darren Turner is about to move into the GT4 class lead. Yes, Gus Burton thought about turning in, thankfully didn't.
I'm glad he decided not to do that.
Yeah, that would have ended in contact, wouldn't it? So Darren Turner through, should now have the pace to get away.
He should. It looks like Darren's having a lot of fun. I like to see this, it's great.
Yeah, getting properly involved in the scrap. Right, Martin Kodrich is in. So this is only a lap later, isn't it, than Plowman came in. So pretty similar strategies here. We might see a bit of this now, actually, as they try and... You always have to work it back from the end of the race. Like I said, they will want their pros in for as much of that last hour as possible. So Kodrich gets out. Hunter Abbott will get in for his final stint. They went, of course, quite long in the first stint, so they're also limited, aren't they, on how much time they can have for Hunter in the car. The interesting thing to see here then, I guess, Marino, is where it comes out in relation to Leo Machitsky, because now this shift of balance has gone the other way, where 2Cs have left their, in theory, quicker driver in for a bit longer. Will it be enough for them, do you think, to get back ahead of this car?
We're going to see in a lapper, so this... I want to say that was only a 16-lap stint from 2Cs there, so it wasn't a very long one. How much time does Abbott still have to do in the car? That is the question.
Well, when did they pit? They went past the hour mark, didn't they?
They did.
So he's going to have 30 minutes tops, I reckon, that he can stay in. So that's probably what it is. They have to get him in now, because they can't run him too long, and they need to save the time for Martin Kodrich. It gives you a headache, this stuff, doesn't it? I'll tell you, I know you said I could be a team manager earlier on. I don't think I fancy it.
I could be a team manager of one car, but trying to keep up with what they're all doing is making my brain hurt.
It's a good job we're the two people trying to keep everyone up to date with what the strategies are doing then out on track. Out goes the 14 car. Hunter Abbott back on board, and here comes Machitsky. This is going to be tight, you know, because the 2Cs car was at the top end of the pit lane. It's got to trundle right the way down into Cobb's corner. Machitsky goes across the line now. There he is on the right. Abbott on the left. Abbott will get out in front, but only by a couple of seconds.
So remember that 24-second gap we were talking about in the first stint between these two cars? That's what it is now.
Yes, and now, now we get the battle that we probably should have had in the first stint. If Machitsky hadn't spun on lap 1, this conceivably could have been the situation throughout the first hour of the race, couldn't it? With Machitsky sort of chasing down Hunter Abbott. So we don't really know what their relative pace is. Abbott was able to check out in the first stint because Machitsky wasn't there to keep him on his toes.
And just in the background there's Mr. Fletcher and his Bentley trying to join in, catch up and join in.
Yes, with Eastwood yet to pit behind him. So Eastwood is a lap ahead of these three, but you're right, Kelvin Fletcher is up there as well. It's all coming together nicely, this, isn't it? Building well towards the final hour. We have an hour and 19 minutes left on the clock. The penultimate pit stop cycle then starting to be made now by the leading GT3 cars. So now, when does Sandy Mitchell pit? And when does this car actually of Charlie Eastwood pit? Because they are both also in this fight. I think realistically, we're looking at 4 cars, maybe 5 if you include Beechdean, that are in contention for the victory here. The timing of this next pit stop for 38 and for 1 could be pivotal.
It really could be. I wonder if Johnny Adams carrying any damage from that contact that we saw earlier, because it was right on the wheel and it can knock the tracking out.
Yeah, his last lap was a 2:01.2, so 0.6 off his best. That's not bad. Of course, he could have had traffic as well. The rear of a car is far more likely to withstand that contact than the front. So we saw what it did to the front of the McLaren, but hopefully the rear of the Aston Martin, a bit heavier, a bit stronger, might have withstood it quite well. Right then, Hunter Abbott, how are his sector times looking in the... Hunter Abbott going, through Luffield corner now. Well, we're going to get a lap time for him on the outlap. We're comparing him to Machitsky, though, really, here. Across the line he goes then. The gap between Abbott and Machitsky is 1.8 seconds. On the outlap there, in fairness, Abbott was fractionally quicker through sectors 2, 3 and 4 on his outlap than Machitsky was on his much warmer tyres. You can see there the little race logic box, I think, on the dash is, I reckon, counting down the remaining seconds in this Team Parker Racing pit stop. This is Scott Mulvin in to hand back over to Nick Jones, but you'd like to think there's a team member there with a stopwatch as well, just as a backup.
I'm not sure if it was. They have the predictive time, and it was counting down, but I'm not sure if that's to do with the lap time predictor. I'd like to have stayed on board and be able to see that. He's been told to go, but he's struggling to get it fired there. Now he's off. That's good.
That's a good point, actually, because they're pitting before the start-finish line, so technically that lap hadn't been completed yet, had it? Now it will have done. So the timer should reset. So back out goes, this should be Nick Jones now back in the car then. The Porsche looks and sounds amazing and has actually been picking its way through the order pretty nicely from its relatively lowly grid position. Sandy Mitchell now then leads the race, but owes us another pit stop compared to some of those that were at the front beforehand, but he's still very much in this fight for the victory.
And he's still making me hungry with the Tunnock sticker on the car.
Yes, indeed. Now, what Sandy's hungry for is points, quite frankly, because he didn't score a single one at the season opener at Brands Hatch, and he is the reigning champ, of course. Just had a personal best first sector as well, so is this Sandy maybe getting to the end of his stint, just trying to wring every last bit of performance out of those tyres?
He definitely is. You can see how the attitude of the car, how hard he's pushing. It's dancing around. He's using every single bit of the grip. So I was suspecting, like you were, that he was maybe going to come in that lap, but he's pushing on for another one.
Yeah, so slightly differing strategy here then for Barwell. They've split their two cars strategy-wise, but of course one of their cars has a success penalty. The number one does not, though. We're hearing as well, by the way, Bryn Lucas has been down and chatted to the Beechstein squad. No damage that they're reporting on the number 7 car, but then they wouldn't necessarily tell us if there was, I guess.
Yeah, he said a bit of scuffed paint, so...
Could have been worse. Could have been
no harm, no foul at that point.
No, absolutely. So Sandy Mitchell leads the way by 20 seconds now over Charlie Eastwood, but again, that's we know there will be other cars that slot into that gap once this pit cycle is done. Yelmer Berman is 3rd, Johnny Adam is 4th, Sanderhan 5th, Lewis Proctor 6th, who overtook. This has been a good stint for Lewis Proctor. First he overtook Phil Keane, then he overtook Marco Sorensen and gapped them by 6 seconds. I mean, that is not easy to do. I know Keane is having a bit of an off weekend, but...
that's a good day.
Yeah. You'll go to bed happy tonight, won't you?
Yeah, with those couple of scalps in your pocket, you're a very, very happy driver.
And that's kind of the point. Someone like Lewis Proctor, you know, a silver-graded driver, you're trying to make a career as a racing driver, and you're trying to sell yourself. Every time you're out on track, you're selling yourself to potential teams that could run you at a higher level in motorsport. And if you can go out there and outperform 2 professional factory drivers, it looks good for you, doesn't it?
It certainly does look good. I honestly, I do struggle with the driver grading system myself. I think you're either a professional or you're an amateur. There's not really much in between it. It's quite a difficult thing to work out for me, but he's having a great day, and I think he was happy after qualifying, wasn't he? He was very happy with how that had gone, and we saw him on the grid before the race, and he's having a very positive weekend.
Absolutely. There are quite a few of them out there, actually, that look set maybe to start to turn their seasons around a little bit in this race. There goes the 14 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes, followed by the 63 Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. Hunter Abbott 9th at the moment, Leo Machitsky 10th, but this could, in theory, become the battle for the lead once the 8 cars ahead of them make their pit stop. So Mitchell, Eastwood, Berman, Adam, Dahan, Proctor, Sorensen and Keane should all be in shortly. Drive-through penalty, I'm afraid, for the Team Parker Racing Porsche. It's just come up on the timing screen. We don't know why. There is absolutely no information on there as to what it is, but they've just made a pit stop. So putting 2 and 2 together here, Marino, I reckon that's another pit stop infringement.
Yeah, must be. Darren Turner in the lead of GT4 has pulled out a 3.5 second lead so far over second, and he's 22.2 seconds ahead of third. So
yes, third place being Scott McKenna still in the Toyota. There's confirmation of the drive-through for this car that we ride on board with, Team Parker Racing. Track limits, says Bryn Lucas. So, yes, so the track limits are monitored over the course of an hour, generally speaking. Different championships have different ways of judging and monitoring their track limits. They will reset after an hour, and they had too many track limits penalties within that hour. So it wasn't a pit stop infringement, it was track limits for the 66 car. And again, that's one of those frustrating things, isn't it? I mean, you gain every time you exceed track limits. I mean, you sometimes don't gain anything. If you do, it's half a tenth or so, and you're going to lose a lot more time than you'll ever gain by exceeding them by doing a drive-through.
You are. What you do gain, though, is you put less strain through the tyres. Being able to open up the corner more, you're not straining the tyre as much. You're not taking as much life out of it. You're just able to roll more speed also. Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of gravel traps and grass.
Yes, because then you're not tempted to use them, are you? And,
no, you're not. It's funny, isn't it, that these drivers, they never run wide on the corners where there's gravel and grass. They always just seem to run wide on the corners where there's all the tarmac. Here's Darren Turner out of the car.
Yes.
Out of the lead.
That's significant then, isn't it, actually? So Matt Topham getting in. So how long was that stint for Turner? He got in early, didn't he, actually? So it was probably quite a lengthy stint there for Darren. Topham will go in now maybe for half an hour. And then Darren will jump back on board for the final stint. As there, side by side. Now that is the Bentley now in the hands of Kelvin Fletcher. That's Yelmer Berman, I think, just going past him, but they're on different laps. So the Bentley being lapped by the number 6 Mercedes, which still owes us this second pit stop. Charlie Eastwood has just dived in the TF Sport Aston Martin, the car that qualified second on the grid. Got that 2-place grid penalty, though. There it is. Look, the 38 car in. So that is Eastwood out. Giacomo Petrobelli back in for his final go behind the wheel. I'm not convinced that car is out of contention in certainly for a podium in this race. We know it's got good speed from qualifying yesterday. They were given the grid penalty, weren't they, which put them down from 2nd to 4th. That was because they crossed the blend line coming out of the pit lane. So, yeah, it'd be nice to have TF back on the podium. And there, I'm afraid, broken suspension, yes, on the number 90 car. So that is Jack Brown and Ashley Marshall. It is Brown in the car now, had a spin in his first stint, didn't he, up at Village. This time, though, he's made contact with something. Well, do you think he's hit someone or maybe a curb?
We'll have to see. I don't see much damage around the wheel, and you can still see the Pirelli on the tyre, which is generally a sign that they haven't made wheel-to-wheel contact.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The suspension is definitely broken.
Right, well, yes, I can see that. What caused it, we know not, but we'll see if we can get some news from the team.
I mean, it's really busted. It looks like it's broken the upright there.
There are no sort of witness marks down the side of the car, though. There's no sign that he's hit another car. So we wonder whether maybe he's hit one of those sausage cars, sausage curbs. I've got food on the brain. Sausage curbs out on the circuit. Right, more penalties were briefly flashed up on our timing screen. I'll be honest, I didn't spot who that was for, but that was another track limits penalty being handed out.
Here we've got Lewis Proctor on screen. He's having a good day, isn't he? He really is.
Except the car that should have been given a track limits penalty is car number 5, Lewis Proctor. So, there was a reason he appeared on our screens then, Marino, and it wasn't a good one.
Sorry, Lewis.
We've done that a few times this race, haven't we? So Lewis Proctor then. So you've claimed a couple of high-profile scalps. You've sold yourself in that respect, and then you go and get a track limits penalty. So on balance, more bad than good in this stint, I'd say.
Yes. What is the penalty?
I think it was a drive-through. It was on the screen for a second and then sort of vanished, but I think it was a drive-through.
That's a lot of time to lose.
Yeah, that's been the standard penalty. Rather than adding time on at pit stops and things, just bring them in for that extra run down the pit lane.
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Gets it over and done with straight away, and it's you don't have to deal with this situation of cars on the track being actually 2 or 3 positions further back than they appear to be. Right, 63 and 14. What's going on here? Hunter Abbott, Leo Machitsky. Previous lap, Machitsky was about 6 or 7 tenths quicker. Again, traffic could have had something to do with that. Speaking of which, that's Matt Topham that they were just putting a lap on in that Aston Martin. Then the car that started, the Newbridge Motorsport car that started 4th on the GT4 grid. They weren't with us at Brands Hatch, but they are not a race-by-race entry. They are doing the rest of the season, are Darren and Matt, which is great news. And even though they've missed the first race, you know, if they can come out and win this race, they've got 37.5 points then in their pocket. it's not inconceivable that that 27 Aston Martin could be a championship contender still.
Still a lot of racing to go in this season. So the 42 Audi in GT4. Richard Williams back in the car. I think they've... Oh, okay, Darren's just stopped, but I think they've got 2 full pit stops now. Undertaken.
Yeah.
So they're putting themselves in a really good position for the end of this race. They seem very confident when we heard from Richard earlier that their strategy was the right one, and so far that seems to be working out.
Yes, so Topham goes across the line now, and out of the window I can see that Williams is coming out of Luffield, so that's what, a 10-second gap or so? And I think that is a legitimate gap, as you say. They've both done 2 pit stops. The difference is Topham's at the start of his stint. Williams is probably coming to the end of it, because it was a really... they did half-hour stints, didn't they, at the start of the race? So Williams did the first half hour, then in jumped Senna and Fielding for half an hour, and now Richard's been in the car for the best part of, well, 50 minutes, let's say. So this has been his long stint. They can probably pit within the next 10 minutes and stick Senna and Fielding in for the entire last hour.
Yeah, it could work out very nicely for them.
Yes.
The 63 Lambo, it's been a great recovery so far, and they're right in the hunt at the moment.
Yeah, 1.6 seconds the gap to Hunter Abbott. Still fascinated to see where Sandy Mitchell, there he is, comes out in all of this. Sandy Mitchell has got Lewis Proctor, who's just served that penalty, suddenly appeared in front of him. And this is difficult for Sandy because Lewis is not slow. Lewis is a very, very quick driver, but he is technically being lapped here. So the marshals won't necessarily know that, so they won't for sure be showing blue flags to Lewis Proctor, and Proctor won't want to move over and let Sandy through because that'll cost him time.
Precisely, and it's what how much tyre temp did Proctor lose in pit lane, taking a run down? Probably not too much. Sandy's not going to be too worried about putting him a lap down if he's not holding him up. The only reason he's going to want to get past is if he feels that he's being cost lap time. So let's see over the next few corners how that settles down.
Yeah, so that lap there for Mitchell, a 2:01.2. His fastest is a 59.5, but I think the average pace at the moment for them is about 2 minutes flat. So yeah, he lost probably a second or so there, stuck behind. And there was also some GT4 traffic in it. At this part of the circuit, Proctor's getting away. That could just be the dirty air for the Lamborghini, couldn't it? Just want to go back to GT4, by the way, and as I say that, in comes Scott McKenna in the Toyota number 15. Conversation we just had about the Audi. Tom Hornsby at SRO has just been sort of agreeing with us, but also reminding us that the Audi is a silver car, as in comes Hunter Abbott. So yeah, they're going to stick, this is what we said, isn't it? They're going to stick Kodrich in for the last hour and 5 minutes. Also getting used at number 90, Jack Brown. That suspension damage was a legacy from earlier contact, we think. So lots to unpack all of a sudden there. 14 is in then, that's their last pit stop. Here Sandy Mitchell is still not able to get past Lewis Proctor despite all of the light flashing in the world. But back to GT4, the Audi is a silver combo, so remember, they also have that 14 seconds extra to serve at the final pit stop, whereas the Newbridge Motorsport Aston Martin does not, because they are Pro-Am. Also, Century have that 20-second penalty as well, and 14 seconds of silver time. So although the Audi could be in contention here, they have to overhaul, first of all, 10 seconds or so on the track, and then that extra 14 seconds in the pit stop.
10-second stop-and-go penalty for car 21, so Mia Fluet for pit lane infringement.
Yeah, we've seen almost more pit lane infringement penalties than track limits penalties, haven't we?
We have.
Which is odd, because we made the point, didn't we? You don't have to rush these pit stops. Everything can happen in its own time, and yet still we're seeing penalties being given as in comes Mitchell. So
maximising the pit entry there, pushing it right up to the pit speed line.
So this is their second stop, isn't it? So they are going to put Adam Ballon back in. They're going to have to make another pit stop, presumably around the half an hour to go mark. In fact, the same is true probably of all of these GT3 cars coming in now for their second stops. But of course, this is the third stop for the 14 car. So Hunter Abbott gets out. There he is. Pretty happy with himself. Rightly so.
Absolutely. Very good day so far.
So Kodrich now is into the end. So he's going to do an hour and 3 minutes and change. There he goes. Slowly down 50 kilometres an hour. It feels like walking pace, doesn't it? I know that's a bit of a cliche to say, but when you're blasting around the Silverstone circuit at, well, I mean, the speed traps at the moment are up there around about 155 miles an hour, fastest top speeds. 50 kilometres an hour feels like absolutely nothing.
It really does, and you get to the end of the pit lane here in the old pits at Silverstone, and that corner, when you drop the button, you're on, okay, pre-warm tyres, but still new tyres. Trying to maximise that pit exit and get the most out of your outlap is such a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing you want to do is spin in the pit lane exit, of course. That would be rather embarrassing. So Sandy Mitchell is in there. That means Jelmer Berman will take over the race lead ahead of Johnny Adams second, and then probably Sam de Haan will still stay in, he'll move to third place. Sorensen will be next ahead of Phil Keane, and then Lewis Proctor, who technically has been in the pits twice, but one of those was a penalty. So Machitsky will now be the highest placed car. Well, either Machitsky, again, Machitsky with the highest placed car that's made 2 stops. What's confusing me is the 14 car, has now made its third and final stop, hasn't it? Mitchell in for his second pit stop. Jelmer Berman, by the way, just set the outright fastest first sector. So if you get that little pocket of clean air and the car is working well and the fuel load's dropped a little bit, you can still be setting the absolute fastest pace of the race.
He probably just got a clear run. The car's obviously working well for him, and he probably just for one of the only laps got a clear run through that first sector.
There he is actually in the background, Jelmer Berman, closing in on our GT4 leader, Gus Burton. He's been in front, or this car has been in front for basically the entire race, but it is going to be fascinating to see where the 42 Stella Motorsport Audi comes out in all of this. Out of Luffield goes the BMW. No pit stop for them just yet. They're going to keep on keeping on. Through Woodcote they go. And what are their lap times like compared to Richard Williams? Williams did a 2:13.3, Burton's 13.0, so comparable actually. And bear in mind that Williams,
that'll be track limits there.
Oh yes, it will, won't it? No need for that either, really. He wasn't really racing anybody.
No, it's interesting though. You just get to the middle of the copse, and if the wind's blowing a certain way, no matter what type of car you're in, you get to that apex at copse, and it just blows you off the track. He's obviously pushing right to the limit as well. He's been in there for a little while now, so I'm sure the tyres are getting towards the end of their useful life.
I said at the start of the race there was a risk of rain in this final hour, but dare I say it, it's brightening up a bit actually. There are still clouds.
That means it's about to absolutely hammer it down, doesn't
yeah,
it?
That's the way, isn't it? Lulls us into a false sense of security.
That special weather system that just sits over the top of Silverstone.
Yes, exactly. It is warm here today. That's actually one thing that will be suiting the drivers a little bit. As you say, they've got tyre warmers anyway, but it's not like they're going out there onto a really cold track. So even if we do get a bit of drizzle, should burn off pretty quickly. Jelmer Berman then, one of the fastest men on the track at the moment. He managed to use that outright fastest first sector to turn it into a personal best lap time for the car, a 1:59.650. 23 seconds nearly ahead of Johnny Adam in second, Sam de Haan third, Marco Sorensen fourth, Phil Keane is fifth, and 1 minute and 19 seconds behind Berman. And of course Berman isn't even going to end up being the race leader once this all cycles through, so Keane is, to be honest, WPI are going to do well to get points out of this race, aren't they?
Yeah, it looks like it, where they are at the moment. It's interesting to see. I was just looking at the timing, and while Johnny Adams' car doesn't seem to have the ultimate pace, he's like a metronome. He's just knocking out the times lap after lap after lap. Traffic, no traffic. He's keeping that car in the fight at the moment. I don't think he's very happy with it, but he's maintaining the pace and keeping it in there. Hopefully they can make maybe a tire pressure switch at this next pit stop and get the balance back in. Here we go, 63 back in the pits.
Yeah, so this is bang on cue, really, isn't it? We thought that Dennis Lynn would try and do the last hour, and there are 59 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock. So Dennis Lynn will get in, out will get Leo Machitsky after a good day's work here at Silverstone for Leo. But now this is the money stop. Everything has to go right. And remember, this car has 10 extra seconds to serve because they finished third at Brands Hatch. The cars then that have success penalties to serve at their final stop, WPR Motorsport, Phil Keane and Michael Igo, 20 seconds. Beechstein, Aston Martin, Johnny Adam and Andrew Howard, 15 seconds. And this 63 car with 10 extra seconds. In GT4, the 57 car that leads the race has a 20-second success penalty to serve, so that's something else to factor in. The 9 car that was second at Brands Hatch has a 15-second penalty, and the number 2, which is in contention for a podium maybe, but they have a 10-second success penalty to serve as well. They roll the car forward now to do the tyre change.
Just because they only have one fueling station there for the 2 cars, so obviously the other one must be coming in at some point, so they're moving it forward to do the tyre change. That was a 15-lap stint there for Maciejewski, so he's that little error on the first lap, that spin aside, he's been fantastic, and he's made an amazing comeback from that.
They even have time to wash the windscreen for him and get rid of some of those dead flies that will no doubt be obscuring the vision. Phil Keane has just come in too, so Phil Keane handing over to Michael Igo. That's their second stop. We've got this slightly confusing situation where some of the cars, the top 4 in GT3, plus Greg Cape in the GCAT Porsche, have done 1 pit stop. Then a handful of them have done 2, and we're now starting to get some going into this final set of pit stops. As confusing as it can be, Marino, though, I really enjoy this, and I know the teams do as well. It's something that can frustrate them sometimes in the 60 and 180-minute races, where there is a sort of set pit window, certainly in the 60-minute races. They love having this full strategic freedom. As long as neither of your drivers does more than 100 minutes, you can make those 3 pit stops whenever you like, and it's something the teams have really been asking for a long time.
It's really good. I love it, and you just know that it's all going to distill down at the end to several cars trying to use the same piece of track and get the victory. And I'm very interested to see how this last 57 minutes works out, and who ends up where. Not just that, but how much pace do they have at the end of the race, because it's all fine and well to get the strategy right, be in the lead, but if you haven't quite got the pace, you're not going to win the race. Yeah, you can get as good a strategy as you want. I think this Lamborghini, though, the 63 car, all things being equal, they have had, at any point when Lynn's been in the car, they have had a pace advantage. He's getting hassled here at the moment by the 7 Aston Martin.
Yeah, Johnny Adam a lap ahead, remember, of Dennis Lind, so Dennis doesn't really need to fight this, but of course he will probably feel that once he gets up to speed, he should be quicker than Johnny. This is a difficult situation to be in, because technically he should get out of the way of the car that's a lap ahead, but he doesn't want to sit behind it and then lose time for the next handful of laps. Will Moore is in, meanwhile, in the 61 Ford Mustang. Then this is from 3rd place in GT4. I think GT4 is kind of, well, I say it's boiling down to a 2-horse race, but with these success penalties, maybe not. This car, of course, has no success penalty to serve, although 61 are a silver car, so they have an extra 14 seconds to serve at every one of their pit stops. But yeah, back to Dennis Lind. Now that he's got settled in, he's getting away from Johnny Adams. So although Johnny would have been frustrated, if Dennis had let him go, that would not have been the right thing to do from Dennis's point of view.
No, you just do not want to give up track position. Johnny on the last lap there was within a 10th of that car's fastest time, of the fastest time that he's done. So again, the Beechstein car is definitely showing pace, or it's maximising its pace, let's say, over the longer runs. But it is, compared to the Lind car, lacking that ultimate pace so far today.
Michael Ben-Yaya there in the number 3 Rocket RJN McLaren, going under the lap down in his GT4 car. That is running 5th place in the silver element of GT4, 8th overall in the GT4 category. So there you can see then the top 4 cars. So that's the number 6, the number 8. Phil Keane is not in a Mercedes, that's confusing me. The number 6 Mercedes has 1 pit stop. The number 7 Aston Martin, which again is not driven by Scott Mulvin, has served 1 pit stop. The 69 Mercedes has served 1, so has the 95 car as well, the Aston Martin. Then you've got, in 5th position, Lewis Proctor actually has also only served 1 pit stop. That second trip down pit lane was a penalty. So the first car that has served 2 pit stops is Adam Ballon in 6th position, ahead of Giacomo Petrobelli and Calvin Fletcher. The ones that have served 3 stops, it is Martin Kodrich, of course, who is the highest place of those, because although the 66 Porsche has been down the pit lane 3 times, it also has served a penalty. So some of the names are wrong on that graphic, but it still serves some purpose, as it tells us how many pit stops the various cars have made. So back through Abbey they go. So 63 Dennis Lind then, getting away from Johnny Adams, starting to get into the groove now. You get into the car, Marino, and you're told, right, you're in it to the end now. You've got a full hour, fresh tyres. That's got to be a nice feeling, knowing that, right, you can settle in now. You've got a full hour to do your work.
You do. You don't have, as you say, settle in. There's no time for that. You saw that he left the pit lane. Johnny Adam is right on him and pushing him, and he has to maintain that track position. So you've got to almost it's not like a volume control where you can gently turn it up to where you want to be. It's a switch. You have to be on. You have to be up to the pace. And we've seen that from Lind. He was straight out, straight on it, using the tyres while they're hot. They're not at a working temperature, working pressure yet. So you have temperature, but you don't have pressure. And you've got to push them, but if you strain them too much while the pressure's still low, you can actually cause damage to the tyre, which will hurt you later in the stint. So you're trying to spin all these plates as you're leaving pit lane, and it's a challenge, but it's a lovely thing as a driver to be able to, when it's working well like it is for Lind at the moment, to be able to get that all right and to be able to exploit every single bit out of the car and out of the strategy. It's a satisfying day at the office when you can do that.
And that's hard to do, and that is one of the differences, isn't it, between the pros and the AMs. The pros generally are able to do that, but if you're an AM driver, it's got to be hard to go out there, especially if you're thrown straight into a battle when you come out of the pit lane. You know, it's got to be difficult for a relatively inexperienced driver to be able to just switch back into race mode like that.
It's so hard, and you're also not just trying to do all those things that I spoke about. You don't have as much experience, and you don't want to damage the car or get a puncture or do something wrong. It's very hard for the AMs, because the difference between the pros is so small. It truly is, in races like this, the AMs that make or break your race. And we've seen that already today.
Yes, well, the AM in this car very nearly threw the race away for Barber Motorsport, but Leo Machitsky then put in a brilliant second stint. Dennis Lind has already had one really good stint, and they could be on course now to at least challenge for the race victory, but there is a lot still to shake out from all of this, because the number 63 and the 14 now have both
great
made
battle here in GT4. Look at this with the 61 and the 42,
and that
wheel to wheel.
It's not even for
it's
position.
not even for position. They're like a lap apart, and they're fighting like it's the last lap. It's wonderful to see.
Oh, fantastic. That 10-second penalty, by the way, for 63, the success penalty, really has hurt them, because Lind is nearly 18 seconds behind Martin Kodrich. And remember, neither of those cars have to pit again. So that's the challenge now for Lind. 18 seconds he's got to find, and he's got 51 minutes to do it.
That's a big ask, but the pace we saw from him earlier, if there's anyone capable of doing it out there today, it's him.
So Kodrich to Lind then is 18 seconds. We are on the 63rd lap of the race. 500 kilometres, by the way, which is what the Silverstone 500 is named for, would be 85 laps. And if we make it beyond that, it would actually be a race distance record. So with no safety cars so far, touch wood, we could be on not only to hit the 500 kilometres.
No, you've done it.
I know, yeah. I knew as I started saying that I shouldn't have said it, but it would be quite cool, wouldn't it, if the Silverstone 500 actually made it to 500 kilometres this time?
Be very good. Now, the thing is, I think it takes a lot for the different levels of driver, the different classes to coexist on track and to not get into race-ending contact. And of course, we've seen some contact that has put cars into the garage, but everyone's been doing a really good job of managing traffic and not getting in each other's way or annoying each other too much.
And the good thing about Silverstone, it is a nice wide circuit. There are lots of places where you can, if you're in a GT3 car, simply drive past the GT4s. If we were at Brands Hatch, well, we were a few weeks ago, it was a lot harder there actually to get past those GT4s, and so as a result, the temptation is there to actually make a bit of a dive on the GT4, go for a bit of a lunge, whereas here, longer race as well, they can be a little bit more patient, I guess.
You can be a bit more patient. You don't have to worry. At Brands, you're worried about offense and defense. You're worried that if I don't pass this guy, is someone else going to get an advantage over me and a run on me? It's not such a big problem here. Just while we were chatting there, I could see that Jelmer Berman was trying to put the Ballon Lamborghini a lap down, obviously on different strategies right now and in different stages of their stints.
Yeah, still these top four, actually top three now, let's make it, because, no, still right, this is a third pit stop for TF Sports 38 car. Top four cars have still only made one stop, but they're showing no signs of pitting yet either, so they're going to have to make another 2 pit stops now inside the last 3/4 of an hour or so. That's number 6, Jelmer Berman, 7, Johnny Adam, 69, Sam de Haan, and 95, Marco Sorensen. Sorensen's teammate or sister car here 38 is in, so Giacomo Petrobelli getting out, and it will be jumping into the 38 car now. Charlie Eastwood again for his second stint. They did cut that second stint quite short for Charlie, so he's going to get just over 45 minutes in the car. And this was the car that was a bit of a dark horse maybe for the GT3 honours, because obviously they have no success penalties to serve, this being their first appearance of the year. And they were there or thereabouts, weren't they? They were a little way behind the top three in the last stint, but once it all shakes out, they could still be contenders.
I have a question for you.
Oh dear.
If you have a success, you know, the success time to serve in a pit stop, can you come in and serve only that?
No, it has to be served at the final driver change.
Okay.
So yeah, you can't just come and because that's why they say 3 driver changes rather than 3 pit stops, because you could technically come in and yeah, just serve the penalty. So no, it has to be added on to the final driver change.
And Berman on that lap managed to put Ballon a lap down at the moment. Obviously, again, different strategies, but he's got the track position and a whole lap behind at the moment. The Lamborghini #1 is a whole lap behind right now.
Haven't touched on GT4 for a while, but we do have a Century Motorsport 1-2 again now. Again, neither of the both of the Century BMWs have only made 1 stop, and they are the only 2 GT4 cars to have only made 1 stop. So that's significant in that they still owe us those 2 pit stops, but it is there is the #9 car having a very close moment actually with the car that could come out as the race leader, and arguably should come out as the race leader once all of this is said and done. The #14 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes and Martin Kodrich.
And that gap's down to 10 seconds between Lind and Kodrich.
Yes.
Is that right? No, that's a gap. No, it's still about the same. Sorry, there's a car in between them at the moment.
Yes.
Which threw me off. It's 15 seconds at the moment between those 2 cars.
Yeah, so it has come down a bit. Johnny Adams in and Sander Hahn. So this is the second pit stop for Beach Dean and for Ram Racing. Johnny Adams hands back over to Andrew Howard. Sander Hahn hands over to James Cottingham. Now, they're going to possibly only be in the car for 15 or 20 minutes, these 2, because they're going for the 2 pit stops in the final hour, whereas a lot of the teams went for 2 pit stops in the first hour and then longer stints after that. So Adam will get out, and Sander Hahn likewise. Haven't seen much of Sam in this race, but he's having a pretty decent time. You can see him now as he helps James Cottingham in. What job does the driver have to do here that's just got out of the car? Because you can see Sam there, he's helping out with the pit stop, isn't he?
Yes, he's just bolting him in. Basically, the driver helps. He's a driver assistant, so he's doing the seat belts, making sure the radio's plugged in, making sure the seat's in the right position, or the pedal box and steering if that's what moves in the car, and just and then putting up the window net as the last thing, making sure your teammate's okay. It's so easy to get something wrong, to twist the belt, to not get the drinks bottle and something like that, and that really can cost you over a stint if you're not comfortable, if you're thirsty. There's a lot to get right, and that, I think actually when drivers help drivers, they know the things that have to be right, and they don't kind of let each other get in trouble like that.
Something we don't really talk about a lot, but driver comfort, how important is that? Because we kind of think of these guys, especially the pros, they can just get on with the job, it doesn't really matter. But if there is something like, your drinks bottle isn't connected or something, how much of an effect can that have?
It's not so bad on a day like this when it's not too warm. I mean, I had once where a pad went in slightly wrong, and basically it created a tennis ball sized lump on my spine, and I lost feeling in my legs. So it's very difficult to accelerate and brake when you can't feel what's going on below your waist. And that was a 24-hour race, and I had to keep driving, but I was not in good shape. So it's very important that everything is spot on. And these cars now, they have air conditioning, they're very comfortable, but they're also very physical to drive with the downforce and the speeds that they're capable of. So everything just has to be right.
Yes, let's hope everything's right for Century Motorsport then. The #9 car is in. Now that is their second pit stop. 27 of Matt Topham has also made 2 pit stops, so this car should now go back ahead of #9 once the 9 is back out on track. 57 is about to come through and complete another lap, still as the race leader in GT4, again owing us 2 more pit stops. There you can see also in is Calvin Fletcher. So this is the final pit stop now for the Bentley. And Calvin will stick Martin Plowman back in, so a relatively short stint that for Calvin Fletcher. And where will they come out? Because they are 100% a factor for the race win, aren't they? Yes, so the 11 car then is going to get back out on circuit very shortly. And we'll see where they come out in relation to the, well, to this car is one of them, to the 14 car as well. 14 to 63. Well, let's see then. Martin Kodrich just went through and did a 2 minutes 0.0. That's helpful. The car that was confusing us because it was in between Kodrich and Lind has just pitted. That's Nick Jones in the Porsche. So they are now next to each other on track, sort of, and they are 14.5 adrift. So Lind hasn't been chomping into that gap, has he really? It's coming down, but only by, you know, a few tenths a lap.
It's coming down, but is it going to be enough? With 43 minutes to go, he's possibly going to have to find a bit more than that. And I think what we've seen from the Mercedes is it's very consistent. So if he's going to start catching that car up, he's got to start doing it soon. I wonder if he's pacing himself. We shall see.
Possible. The Lamborghinis have been known for being pretty good on their tyres as well in the past. Mid-engine cars sometimes can be a bit lighter, especially on the front tyres. They're not leaning on them quite as much. There goes the big front-engine Bentley, though, back out on track then, Martin Plowman. So where does he come out then in relation to those that they're racing for podium places? Well, that was one of the TF Aston Martins, which is not on their, not in their fight really. So he comes out pretty much on his own really. One of the Ram Racing cars behind that is that Cottingham or is that Berman? I think it's Cottingham, isn't it? Yeah, 69. So that is not for position because Cottingham's 69 car has made 2 pit stops and Plowman's number 11 Bentley has made all 3. So he's come out pretty isolated there, hasn't he? We'll see at the end of the lap when the timing screen updates exactly where he is in relation to the 14 and 63. But that means that now 3 of our heavy hitters in GT3 have made their final stops of the race.
I'm just looking at the timing screen trying to work out who's going to be close to who once this is all played out.
Berman is in, by the way. Jelmer Berman just coming in from the race lead. So Jelmer Berman, he was about a minute ahead of Marco Sorensen, but that's not a genuine fight, really. That's the second stop of the race for the number 6 Mercedes. There it is. Jelmer Berman is in and hands over once, or will hand over again to Ian Loggy, who himself had a decent stint earlier on. Ian's a pretty experienced driver these days, isn't he, really? He's been racing in British GT for a number of years. He's been racing in general, though, for a long time, and experience in an AM driver is really useful. Even if they're still not as quick as the pros, they've experienced a lot of racing situations through the years that they can then apply to this.
You could see that in the first stint. He didn't get flustered, he didn't get into trouble, he didn't make any mistakes, and actually over the whole stint, because of that consistency and how careful he was, they were in a really good position when he handed the car over. And as I said earlier, it's the AM that will make the difference right at the end. Unless there's a yellow and then everyone's closed up together, the AM's speed will make the difference over the race.
We might be about to see in the background a pit stop being made by Team ABBA, who have got that number 8 car back out on track. They are obviously multiple laps down, but that's good. At least they're getting some running, and there you can see it there, the green and black Mercedes in the background. I didn't even realise they were back out on track. They are last. No, they're not actually. They're 29th. They are ahead by a lap of the number 70 McLaren, which was the Inception Racing with Balf Motorsport McLaren. So good to see them getting back out there. And, you know, this does now become a glorified test session, but any track time you can get, especially a youngster like Sam Neary, is useful.
It's all good mileage for him. I could hear on the ambient mics there somebody stalling, pulling away from their pit there and getting it refired. I'm not sure who that was. I don't think it was any of our leaders, but I'd be interested to know who that was.
Is that easy to do, as stall as you pull out?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you have warm tyres. When the tyre's really cold, it's very easy just to spin it and to pull away. When the tyre's got some heat in it, it's very easy to bog the car down.
Which thankfully does not happen for Ian Loggy. Michael Igoe is in. Final pit stop then being served for WPI Motorsport, the race winners at Brands Hatch. They will have 20 extra seconds to spend in the pit lane then as a result of that. Right, there is the number 1 car, which owes us one more pit stop of Adam Ballon. Behind him is Martin Kodrich, the number 14 2Cs Racing Mercedes, who is now 13.3 seconds ahead of Dennis Lind. Then you've got Charlie Eastwood, who... so 38 is ahead of 11 then by the looks of it. That is interesting. So Charlie Eastwood, having served the final pit stop now for the 38 Aston Martin, is ahead of Martin Plowman in the Bentley by quite some way by the looks of it. But Ballon here doesn't have to get out of the way of Martin Kodrich, does he?
No, I mean, Kodrich's just trying to unlap himself at the moment.
and struggling to do so, and it's obviously, yes, so the car that 14 are racing with is 63, which is the other Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. I may be being cynical here, Marino, but I wonder if maybe Adam Ballon could make life easier for Kodrich if he really wanted to.
He possibly could, but I think whatever was happening, he does not, the way that this is going to work out, he does not want to give any advantage to the cars that have already completed all their stops. He's using all the track and more there.
Martin Plowman, I said, oh, this is getting tight, isn't it? That's the GT4 leader, number 57, Gus Burton, and also the number 5 McLaren, which I think is now being driven by Stuart Proctor. All of these cars on different laps, all 4 of them, but all trying to just find their own bit of real estate, and now Kodrich tries to get up the inside. Didn't quite work. The gap between Kodrich and Lind at the start of the lap then was 13.3 seconds. In the first sector, Lind was 0.4 quicker. In the second sector, he was another half a second quicker, so this really has been hurting Kodrich, but he's finally got the move done.
Got the move done on one car, but now he's got to try and get past the number 5 Proctor car as well.
Yes. Oh, and in as soon as Kodrich got past him, Ballon has pitted. So, yeah, the plot thickens maybe with that one. So Ballon is in for a third and final time. Marco Sorensen had taken the lead, but he's in now for a second pit stop. Out of the pit lane goes Phil Keane, so that's his final stint and the final stint for that car beginning. We should now be starting to get really into these final few pit stops of the race. Ballon out, Sandy Mitchell back in, and yeah, Ballon did his job there for the team, but now, of course, they're trying to get themselves in contention as well, because this car is not out of it either.
Oh, it's definitely not out of it. It did well in qualifying. It was the fastest Lamborghini in qualifying. In the race today, I think that the Lind car has an advantage over the full stint, but if they can be in the right place on the track for this last stint, they can certainly battle for the win. Here we have the moving pit stop, Barwell moving pit stop again, which is very confusing.
So that must mean 63 are going to be in soon. Now the gap, we think that whole thing with Ballon cost Kodrich about 5 seconds or so. He was about 14 seconds ahead. He's now 9.5 ahead of Dennis Lind. There is Lind, you can see, in a bit of traffic. He's got Ian Loggy ahead of him, and just behind him the GT4 leader, which still... So 57. So how's this for a strategy then? The 57 Century Motorsport BMW, with 36 minutes left, has still only pitted once. So they're going to squeeze 2 pit stops into the final half an hour. Maybe they're hoping for safety cars, but they've got this massive success penalty to serve. I guess maybe it was worth the roll of the dice.
It has to be worth it, because I think if you can serve the success penalty stop under the safety car, you're going to lose less time overall anyway. You know, it's going to cost less, because the cars are going so much slower on track.
Yes.
In the crocodile behind the safety car, but they're going to need a lot of safety car to make that work, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anyone do this strategy for a little while, but it was strategy actually that gave Century the victory here a year ago, and they were listening to us because they're pitting now. So 57 is in. Gus Burton about to head down for their second of 3 pit stops. So there goes Kodrich. Wait for Dennis Lind. We can't miss him. The flash of yellow and green. Here it comes. So that's the gap between what we think might be the 2 leaders. And then where does Sandy Mitchell emerge? There. So Sandy Mitchell is still behind the 2 of them, but he's going to have fresher tyres now. How much of a difference could that make?
Well, what's interesting is that Lind early on was able to maintain his lap times through his whole stint and was still flying at the end. I don't think it'll be as big as it would be on a warm day when the tyres were getting a harder time. I think this cool weather means that they're more consistent than... Oh, no dear. Seatbelt on the door.
And the door must be closed before they can refuel as well, so that's why they were...
And the driver's back over the line, because you saw them... The fueler there looking to see where his driver was.
And they can't send a mechanic out to close the door because they're limited on mechanics they're allowed over the line. So that's why the driver, Gus Burton, had to go back and do that. There's a lot to think about when you come in for a pit stop. And of course, you've just done maybe an hour or more in the car. You're hot, you're sweaty, you're worn out, you want to drink water, you want to lie down. And your job isn't done when you cross that pit entry line, is it?
It is not. And you could see there was a mechanic getting ready to hit the fueler to tell him when to disconnect, because obviously 34 minutes to go, they do not need a full tank of fuel. Of course, they still have to serve the minimum pit stop time, but you don't want to carry that extra weight around of extra fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. Kodrich then coming up behind the other Century Motorsport BMW now, which has Chris Salkeld at the wheel. Again, they still owe us a pit stop, and Salkeld doesn't exactly jump out of the way. Right, sector times this time then. Dennis Lind in the first sector. Wow, Dennis Lind, in the first sector, it was a 10.5 quicker. Second sector, another half a tenth quicker. Third sector, a little bit slower than Kodrich. So the gap's creeping down again. What is the gap going to be? Kodrich goes through now in fourth place. It's 8.8 seconds, let's call that, between the two. And it was 0.2 quicker that time for Dennis Lind. 33 minutes to go. 0.2 of a second a lap, though, is not going to be enough. Meanwhile, incident between cars 18 and 5 to be investigated. Well, 18 is WPR Motorsport and 5 is the Balf Motorsport McLaren of the Proctors. We haven't seen that incident, but it's going to be investigated after the race. So there is the lead gap between what will become the lead gap between Martin Kodrich and Dennis Lind. In very quickly has come Ian Loggy. So he did what? 3-4 laps in that stint. That was a very, very short stint for Ian Loggy. You've just got to use up that driver time. They would have loved to have just left Hjalmar Berman in for the rest of the race, but they have to make that final pit stop. And so Ian Loggy barely had time to break out in a sweat, and he's back in the pits.
Yeah, he barely got a chance to get comfortable there, did he?
So through goes the other Ram car. Just going into the pit lane is Matt Topham in the Newbridge Motorsport Aston Martin. So Matt Topham in the GT4 Aston Martin, the only GT4 Aston Martin on the grid, in for the final pit stop. So Johnny Adam will get behind the wheel. That car has no success penalty to serve. It's about to pull in, actually, right in front of Hjalmar Berman in the Ram Mercedes. There it goes. So this is a significant stop, because we know that the car that's leading the race in GT4 owes us one more stop still, and at that stop we'll have to serve a 20-second extra success penalty plus the 14-second Silver Cup penalty, and another door there that didn't want to close.
Yeah, Darren managed to catch the seatbelt on the door there as well. Quite easily done. Just when they fall out, when you jump out of the car, the seatbelts are pulled out and sort of hang out of the door. So usually there's a driver in there and they're held in by the seatbelt, so it's normally not a problem.
Through comes Dennis Lind. What's that lap time? That was a 2 minute 0.0. Now that time he was 9/10 quicker than Kodrich. That's more like it, isn't it? Oh no, and that is Martin Plowman. Martin Plowman has stopped the Paddock Motorsport Bentley. That looks like it's down at Club.
I really don't like that with the Marshal with his back to the cars there. You know, it's obviously under yellows, but it just makes me nervous in case somebody gets it wrong. You got the waved yellows, and of course people should be respecting those, but it just always makes me nervous. I think we could see a safety car here.
Yeah, because the live snatch at that corner, if memory serves, is on the other side of the track. It's on the inside at Club. It can't drive across a live track. Well, you asked for a safety car about half an hour ago, Marino, and I think you might be about to get your wish. They might, of course, be able to refire the Bentley. Certainly Plowman hadn't got out of the car yet, so he hasn't given up hopes of getting back into the race, but that is another car that was in contention for a podium, and through what looks like just a bit of bad luck is now going to be robbed of a really good finish.
You could just see there on the Aston Martin pit stop using the little drill, the little electric drill for the wheels. So it's not just that one massive wheel nut, it's a normal pattern, and they've got to go through all of those. They need to get those NASCAR guns over, using the little electric ones to be a bit faster.
Yeah, having to put the nut on by hand, and then, I see what you mean there.
But I guess they're in those.
So, through comes Bonamy Grimes in the race lead at the moment. So this car it's now, I think, the only front-running GT3 car anyway that still hasn't made its final stop. So if we do get a safety car, they could be quids in here, TF Sport. And of the two TF cars, this is not the one that has been on the pace, really, but strategy and a bit of good fortune could bring them back into it.
We're not going to get a safety car, I would say. Just looking, they were letting the marshals push the car away there. So they seem to be happy to do that under the double wave yellows. People respecting that and slowing down their stints. It's a long way to go, though.
Yeah,
they're obviously determined to get this finished under green.
Marshalls will have some muscles at the end of the day, won't they? Push it, and it's not an easy car to push out of the way.
No, it's all had to be the biggest car, didn't it?
Absolutely. So Bonamy Grimes then, behind Bonamy is a car that's not on the same lap as them. That's the Ewan Hankey driven car, but Ewan of course is a pro and tries to get the inside. We've seen that go wrong a few times today already, and on the exit they almost come together as well. Bonamy doesn't need to fight this. I know Ewan is a lap or two down, but he's a quicker driver. He's got the pace, and Grimes just needs to try and pick the battles. But unless the team...
And he did there. He certainly left them. You know, he left them the space there, so he was listening to you.
Or far more likely the team, who I'd imagine were on the radio. And that's where communication is so important, because as a driver it's easy to get lost sometimes, isn't it, and not really know whether the car that's harrying you is for position. You need the team on the radio to say you don't need to race them, let them go.
It's so important, and especially when you're an amateur driver, to know who you're racing and not racing.
Yeah. Martin Plowman, we're hearing, heard a quote, big bang, which is a technical term, to mean that the car was broken, and he stopped. So that's why. So it was possibly, if you hear a noise that you shouldn't do, it's sometimes safer just to pull over, because if you carry on, you can do more damage to the engine.
Yeah, he's heard a big bang. I'm sure he's lost drive as well. It'll be something in the transmission, drive shaft, prop shaft. You know, obviously that car, front engine, rear-wheel drive, so there's a massive prop shaft that runs down the centre of the car that drives the wheels, and if they go wrong, it is a crazy noise. These poor guys are having to push this car basically to toaster.
Yeah, it's got, because there isn't a gap in the barrier. They've got to go right to the left of shot where that little tarmac area
I'm honestly, I'm not. This is my personal opinion. Obviously, I'm surprised that they didn't put the safety car out for that. That's a long time to leave the marshals under there. They're yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure about that one.
We always give the marshals a shout out. They're all volunteer marshals, of course, but those three in particular get an extra mention.
They do. I hope they get an extra cake for that one, because they have burned those calories.
They've definitely.
The marshals do a fabulous job, so thank you to all of them for all the work.
Oh dear, now that's tricky, isn't it? That was Phil Keane trying to cut the inside of the G-Cam Porsche of Seamus Jennings, which was pitting. I mean, you don't tend to just stick your indicator on in a racing car and let the car behind know.
You do, if you're trying not to get collected, but also you try and hold a tighter line.
Yeah.
You try and stay tighter into the inside, so I think he didn't. He was lucky that Phil was heads up there and didn't collect him.
Right, Kodrich to Mitchell is going out again now. Went out by a second lap time. Kodrich to Lind, excuse me. Lind's problem is not so much fighting for the win anymore, it's fending off their teammate for second, because Sandy Mitchell on the previous lap was a full second quicker than Dennis Lind. So the two Barwell cars, who a couple of years ago, with different drivers at the wheel, admittedly, came to blows here at Silverstone, at the Silverstone 500, 2019, I think it was.
Big moment there for Phil in the middle of Stowe. He is pushing hard.
Yeah, Phil Keane was one of the drivers that lost out as a result of contact between Barwell cars in the past. Phil, of course, moving to WPI this year.
I think we can see there on board, that's what Phil's dealing with. A car that's just not giving him the balance that he wanted. You could see the snap that he had in the middle of Stowe. Just looking back to the GT4 battle, Turner and Fielding, 3 seconds between them, and that is, they've done their stops, that is for the win at the moment.
Yes. How far behind Will Burns are they? That's the question, because Burns, Cowley and Salkeld, 57, 61 and 9, all lowers that final stop, don't they? So Turner and Fielding, the top two cars that are pitted, will get the gap for you if we can at the end of this lap, because that is going to be mighty, mighty tight. It's tight already between those two, and if we add a couple more cars into the mix, even tighter it will get. So there is Martin Kodrich then. He's 41 seconds behind Bonamy Grimes, who is yet to stop. So this will be for the race lead then. Kodrich will inherit the lead. There he is. Now in the background, look, you can see the Lamborghinis on their way. There is Lind, and wait for it, there is Sandy Mitchell. Mitchell on the previous lap was another. Lind did a 59.6. Actually, he was 0.2 slower than Lind on the previous lap, but this is a team manager's worst nightmare, because we're in that final stint as well now, so no quarter's going to be given if these two cars get themselves together.
Definitely not. It's every man for themselves at this point, but you do have to remember the first rule of teammates, which is don't hit each other.
Yes, a rule that Barwell themselves have fallen foul of, as I said, a couple of years ago in this very race. So Sandy Mitchell then who last year wrapped the championship up with a race victory here at Silverstone when he was partnering Rob Collard. Collard's gone off to race in Europe now, but Mitchell sticking around in the number 1 car.
You could see there he caught that number 2 car right in the wrong spot, and it just lost so much. He'll have lost a couple of seconds there.
And he'll have his delta time, won't he, on the dash, and he'll just see it slipping away.
Yellow flag incident involving car 38 under investigation.
38's Charlie Eastwood.
So generally that means they're not happy with that you've slowed down enough through that yellow flag zone. So we shall see.
Because
or possibly overtaking under yellow.
Yes, because
sorry, one of two things there.
It's not just overtaking for position that's a no-no. You can't even overtake a back marker, and if you catch a GT4 car, maybe the GT4 car gets out of your way or something and you go through, but it's still an overtake under yellows. It's tricky, that, isn't it?
It is. It's very tricky. So we shall see what they come up with there, and if there's a penalty to be served.
7.2 now. The gap between Kodrich and Lynn came down by another 2/10, but Mitchell is, well, he did a 59.9 that time, 6/10 faster than Kodrich. So first to third essentially is now under 10 seconds once Grimes makes his pit stop, which has to be shortly because we have only 22 3/4 minutes to go, and Bonamy Grimes has to give Marco Sorensen another go at the wheel, otherwise he's going to risk exceeding his maximum driver time. There goes Sandy Mitchell then. Into Stowe Corner he goes in the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. He's got the GT4 leader ahead. When do they pit then? Will Burns and Matt Cowley and Chris Salkel, those top 3 in GT4. It's their key. Oh, when Matt Cowley pits is right now. Just came in the GT4 Ford Mustang. So in GT4 then, the 27 Aston Martin of Darren Turner and Senan Fielding in the 42 Audi. These are the two that have made 3 pit stops. In between them, look, is the GT3 McLaren, which deals with Darren Turner now. Where will Cowley come out in relation to these two? Because Matt Cowley has 14 seconds to serve in the pits because he's in a silver graded car. So too was the Audi, actually. So the Audi's done well to close back in. This is our first glimpse then in half a lap's time, Marino, of how many cars we have in the lead GT4 battle. It's 2 at the moment, but let's see where Cowley comes out.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be more. Darren's maintaining the gap at the moment to Fielding, so it's working well. They've had good pace in that little Aston all race long.
Yeah, and Darren told me, I think it was Darren told me yesterday, that this race format does suit the Pro-Am entries, and that is being kind of demonstrated in both classes, isn't it? At the moment, it looks like the top 4, 5, maybe even 6 or 7 cars in GT3 are going to be Pro-Ams, and in GT4 it's going to be possibly more silvers towards the front, but of course it's GT4 where you're still allowed these Silver Cup entries, but with the extra 14 seconds at each pit stop to be served, it's certainly hard for a silver combo to come out with the race victory. So Academy Motorsport then, who started from the back of the grid in this race, they managed well, they didn't score any points last time. They scored 1.5 points. They were 10th at Brands Hatch, so the last point scorer in the season opener. They are in for their final pit stop, which means that surely this car should be in soon as well. This is realistically the only other car that will be in this lead battle, won't it? But it has the 20-second success penalty to serve and the 14-second Silver Cup penalty. So compared to the 27 Aston Martin's final pit stop, this car's final pit stop is going to be 34 seconds longer.
Ooh, that is a lot of time to try and make up, and not a lot of race left to do it. And also, even if you have a pace advantage.
So we saw a glimpse there of the Academy Mustang still in. Chris Salkel, by the way, has just pitted in the 9 Century Motorsport BMW, so that's his final stop, which means this is now the only car in GT4, the only car in GT4 that hasn't yet made its final stop. Where are Turner and Fielding? They're in the 2nd sector at the moment, so when they come around this time, then I think we'll see what the gap is.
And Grimes is in from the lead.
He is, you're right. Martin Kodrich, by the way, just did a purple first sector, so Kodrich really is flying now. But yeah, this is the last of our GT3 cars to come in. So finally, 2 hours and 40 minutes into the race, Marino, it's all starting to make sense.
It is, finally. On the last lap before that, though, while Lind on this lap has done a good first sector, Kodrich on this lap, so good first sector, Mitchell is still closing in. on Lind. Even that lap, it was only a 10th. But whenever Lind tries to react to it, Mitchell's, whether it's a 10th, a couple of tenths, he's got a little bit in hand right now. And each lap, that gap's closing down 2 seconds now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see it now then, maybe. There's Kodrich. He's 7 seconds ahead of Dennis Lind, who there comes through. And there, look, Sandy Mitchell getting closer and closer. The Academy Mustang's back out again. I'm pretty sure it's some way behind the 27 Aston Martin, the 42 Ooh. Audi, and Dennis Lind. Well, you said traffic was a chance to gain or lose time, but he seized the opportunity there in the hope now that Sandy Mitchell will get held up by those two going into club.
Yeah, he's trying to thread the needle there, and yep, that's exactly what's happened. Sandy's got caught up in the traffic, and that's definitely going to cost him some time this lap.
Yeah, up the inside of the Ginetta then, the Seto Motorsport car of Charlie Robertson. No chance of the victory, it seems, in GT4 this time, but at least they should be able to get themselves some more solid points and hopefully go a little bit stronger at Donington. Silverstone never used to be a particularly good Ginetta circuit, and even with the G56 model it seems to be the same case. There goes Sandy Mitchell then through the right-hander at Village into the left at the loop. In the first sector he was purple, so 3 tenths faster than Dennis Lind. This is on board meanwhile with the Ford Mustang as Sandy Mitchell comes through.
Yeah, this massive green thing appears in his peripheral vision. He decides to turn out there sensibly.
So Sandy Mitchell then, in the first sector, set up...
He's on the limit there on braking, sorry.
Blimey, yeah, very wide, wasn't he, as he went past the GT4 McLaren. First sector for Mitchell, purple, faster than anybody else, 3 tenths quicker than Dennis Lind. Second sector, traffic gets in the way. He loses 1.3 seconds to Lind in one corner. That is exactly what we've been talking about with traffic.
Yeah, it's the perfect way to show that on screen. You could see Lind, he used the cars fighting to get in front of to get past the traffic, and Mitchell, just where he caught it, bad luck, he could not make the move and clear them, and it cost them. Yeah, you saw it in time, a second.
That was the 9 BMW of Andrew Gordon Colebrook rejoining the race behind, I think, the Mustang of Will Moore. This car, though, still hasn't made its third stop. They're going to do it. They're going to do a Schumacher here, aren't they? And pit right at the end of the race for the final driver change. Will Burns for Century Motorsport then will hand over at some point to his teammate in this 57 car, Gus Burton, to bring it home to the flag. The advantage they've got is, I think, a full lap now. Well, it will be a full lap over Darren Turner, but of course, you're going to lose well over a lap. Remember, a GT4 pit stop is 165 seconds, even before you start then adding on the extra penalties.
Darren Turner as well is not making it any easier for them because he keeps knocking in fastest lap after fastest lap. So just a 10.9 that last lap, a low 11 the lap before that. Stretched the gap now to Fielding to 4.5, getting close to 5 seconds. So Darren is really putting the pressure on. It's going to be very difficult for these guys to maintain that lead and come back out.
Because significantly, because significantly, Darren Turner 2.3 seconds quicker than Will Burns on the previous lap. So he's going quicker than the car that he's chasing, and the car he's chasing has longer to spend in the pit lane. So, intriguing stuff. I told you this race would keep you guessing right to the end. We've got a quarter of an hour to go in the Silverstone 500. Martin Kodrich leads the way for 2C's Motorsport. They've led on and off throughout most of the race, really, but they're 7.7 seconds clear now. Dennis Lind in second, and Sandy Mitchell 1.8 seconds behind Dennis Lind in the sister Barwell car. He was half a second quicker. Without traffic, I think Mitchell can get there, can't he? But then he's got to find a way through.
Both things. He has to get a little bit luckier with his traffic, and also then he would have to try and pass a teammate car. So obviously the performance is so even. We can see that the gains and the losses are without traffic are tiny. But the Mercedes, the 2C's car at the moment, is looking very good because it has that cushion. over these two cars, and he can manage the gap. He doesn't have to drive right at the limit, and you know these guys are pushing as hard as they can to close that.
Yeah, you can see that visually, can't you, on the screens. At long last, Will Burns is in to serve the final pit stop for the 57 BMW, so we'll find out in a couple of minutes or so what the full picture is in GT4. GT3 is fairly straightforward. It's a fight for second between the Lamborghinis. There is Will Burns then. Gus Burton will get back on board then for the final, well, it's going to be 12 minutes or so, isn't it, by the time this pit stop is done. And there he is, just helping extricate Will and then get in himself to, well, he can't do that yet, of course. You can't have anyone touching the car whilst the refuelling is being done. It's a safety measure, which is why they then have to refuel and then change tyres after that. So there's Darren Turner. He's getting away from Sennett Fielding in the Audi. 4.3 seconds the gap. They're heading out onto the hangar straight now, but this is going to be a 2.5 minute plus pit stop. This is going to feel so painful.
And they're going to be done with fueling. I don't know if they're. I doubt they'll take tyres at this point in the race. With only 30 minutes to go.
True.
Not really worth it. So I think it's just going to be a lot of sitting there and waiting.
Yes, although I guess you may as well change tyres in a way, because you've got, let's face it, they've got the time. They've got plenty of time. It's not going to lose you anything.
No.
But
as a Scotsman, though, you know, they cost money, tyres. So you can keep them for the next race.
Very, very good point. So when the Aston Martin comes through this time, it will be to unlap itself, I believe.
I think they've just unlapped themselves, and now this would be for the lead.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the BMW's been in the pit lane longer than I realised. This should be our final pit stop, full stop as well. I think everyone else that's running has made the required number of 3 mandatory driver changes. There is Darren Turner then, out of the loop, through Aintree. He's got a car ahead of him, I noticed, a couple of GT4 cars, and of course that's another problem in and of itself then, because you've got a GT4 car fighting for the class lead, coming up against GT4 cars that may be fighting for their own positions, although in that instance they're not actually, because one of them is Jamie Stanley in the troubled number 40 McLaren. But you don't have that natural pace advantage, do you, over another GT4 car?
Sandy Mitchell is only 1.1 seconds behind Lynn now. He's still closing in.
Oh, Darren Turner, yeah, case in point here, not able to get past the McLaren, but there he is. He's going to go ahead of the 57 BMW. We think that is for the class lead in GT4. Yes, it is. They were back on the same lap then, so that should now be the Newbridge Motorsport Aston Martin on its debut in the championship. Possibly looking odds on here for the race victory in GT4, but then we were ready to give the winner's trophy to Assetto Motorsport at Brands Hatch a few weeks ago, and look how that turned out. So BMW waits in the pit lane then, and as the Lamborghinis, yes, I've just spotted this out the window, they come across the start-finish line with 11 minutes to go, and it couldn't be much closer now. The gap is down to 0.7 of a second. It was another personal best lap there for Sandy Mitchell, a 1:59.174. He is really pushing.
He's on the ragged edge. Love to see that. He's pushing so hard.
Yeah, he can sense a chance here to really turn things around after what happened at Brands Hatch. Of course, for the 63 car, 2 solid podium finishes to start the season off is pretty handy indeed. And don't forget, because that 14 car is a race-by-race entry, okay, it's going to win the race, but this is the battle for 37.5 championship points, because you take those race-by-race cars out of the order when you start looking at championship points. So everyone else then moves up a position. So that is, in a way, for the race win. They won't get the trophy, but they'll get the points.
I'm looking for the timing screen to update here, because it's still showing the Burton car, the 57, on our screen now in first place.
It will update at the end of the lap, I think. So we'll have to wait, unfortunately, till it crosses the line again. Well, technically, until Darren Turner crosses the line, he should then jump back ahead of the BMW. That should happen any moment now. Right, Lamborghini battle, second place through the part of the circuit where these two cars tangled a couple of years ago. Thankfully not quite close enough to do the same sort of thing. Now, Mitchell's done the catching. He's had to work his tyres quite hard to do that. Obviously, he's now running in the dirty air. He's going against a car that, in theory, should have similar pace at similar parts of the circuit to him. What's the strategy here for Mitchell? How does he make this work?
I think he'll be trying to catch Lind out in traffic, because when you're this close, when the car's so close behind you, if you make the wrong decision, it gives them an opportunity to pass you. So Sandy can sit back to a degree and pick his point better if Lind catches traffic at the wrong point. But it's going to be very difficult when you're in the same cars. As you say, catching is one thing, but overtaking is completely different. Look, Dan Turner's still behind this McLaren.
Yes, but he is in the lead. It has now been confirmed that he is ahead of the 57 BMW. Tries to get up the inside now of James Kell in the number 2 McLaren at Stowe. They're losing time here to the Audi behind. You can see the Audi is starting to get closer again. And Darren Turner, he enjoys a good scrap, does Darren, but he's having to fight a bit too hard here to pass a car that is a full lap behind him, but he has now done it. So there are 2 lapped cars now between the top 2 drivers in GT4.
I'm sure he was getting quite frustrated at that point, but it's very difficult. The margins between the cars, we can see it there. These are cars that are not in the lead battle, yet they're still able to run so close to the pace. And obviously with ABS, it's very easy to brake deep, and it makes it very difficult when you're trying to overtake cars. It can be quite frustrating.
So the GT4 order then, Darren Turner leads in the 27 Aston Martin. Second is number 42, Senna Fielding in the Audi. Third for the Toyota of Scott McKenna. Toyota looking for their first podium, remember, in the championship. And they are third place at the moment. Gus Burton came out of the pit lane 26.5 seconds behind even a podium place. The car that's led pretty much every lap in GT4 in this race is not even going to make the top 3. Right, who finishes second and who gets the race-winning points here? 37.5 points for winning the race. It's likely to go to a Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini, but which one?
It's going to be tough to say. I mean, Sandy, just you can see from the attitude of the car, he's using every single piece of performance that it has. Does he have the pace, though, to overtake? And not just overtake, but it's going to be a clean overtake.
Yes, otherwise Mark Lemmer will be having words, fairly strong ones, you'd imagine, in the pit lane. I mean, I'd love to actually hear from Mark, or at least get a shot of him in the pit lane, because he must be having kittens right now. He's been in this position before, but this time it's for the second place in the race. It's for full championship points. Now, traffic ahead, and that is the lead GT4 battle. This could be significant for both classes, couldn't it?
It could. It's so difficult at this point in the race when you're battling within your class and there's traffic and people are you're trying to not impede anyone else, but also you've got your own battle going on. Fielding's now made it past the 2 McLaren, so he's made short work of those. Yes. 2-second gap to Darren. And this is going to be interesting into the chicane here, because a lot of GT4 traffic for the Lamborghinis. They've cleared it nicely before they get in there.
Mitchell to the outside, though, almost got the overlap there. I was a bit worried there, because that's not a good place to catch traffic, but they dealt with it well. The yellow flags have long since gone in as well after the Bentley was moved out of harm's way, so the battle can continue. They got the inside of the second place Audi, which does indicate to the left there to tell them to pass on the right. Nice driving that from Senna Fielding, experienced driver is Senna, and now they've just got this one last McLaren. That's the number 3 example, I think, isn't it, of Vaillant to get past, which they do into Village. So no real gain there for either of them. Lind held position. Mitchell wasn't able to. He had that little go at him down at Club, didn't he? But wasn't ever really able to turn it into an opportunity.
No. He knows that he obviously is trying to catch up in the championship, but he also knows to do that he has to finish cleanly. Mitchell does, so he's pushing hard, but he's not going to do anything silly, I'm sure. He's got his head screwed on as a young man.
Out to Luffield they go then. Now, the car in the race lead is being warned for track limits, not for the first time or the second, but for the 3rd time. If Martin Kodrich exceeds track limits one more time, because we're in the final 5 minutes, it won't be a drive-through penalty, it will be a 30-second time penalty. So talk about pressure. He's got no one around him. He doesn't really need to be pushing this hard, but one more slip-up will cost them the race.
Wow, that is pressure. But at the end of the day, he's put himself in that situation with the track limits. It's so easily done. The margins are tiny. But he's got the gap. He doesn't need to push to that edge. But what he's got to hope is that he doesn't get involved with traffic that runs him wide, because that could be a whole different problem.
Yeah, because then it doesn't matter whether the first 3 were your fault, even if the last one is. Then you'll still get the penalty. It's Copse, Stowe, and this corner here, Club, which they're watching, stayed well away from the white line there.
He's had the message.
Yeah,
someone's been on the telephone and told him, please stay within the track limits.
Well, and you can see these two just flirting with it there as they come out of the final corner. It does seem that Mitchell's hit a bit of a brick wall here. He's caught his teammate, but he just doesn't have the car advantage. They say, don't they, sometimes you need to be the best part of a second a lap quicker than the car in front to be able to make a relatively easy pass. There is the Barwell pit garage, nervous faces. But yeah, I'm just not convinced Mitchell is that much quicker than Lynn, that he's going to be able to just make a move wherever he wants.
No, not so far. It'd be interesting to see, though, what Lind has left. He's really up close here. He could have a look. Yeah, he's got to have a proper advantage. He's got to be alongside to make a move like that work against the car that is so equal with what he's driving.
That might be the place to do it, though. Mitchell seems to come off the loop pretty well, and that gives him good speed through Aintree and down the Wellington Straight. 3¼ minutes to go, so 2 more laps remain in the Silverstone 500. We're on lap 85 as well, so this will be the lap that sees us break the 500-kilometre distance, and it should therefore, hopefully, we'll get confirmation of this, be a distance record for this Silverstone 500, fitting in the 10th anniversary of this blue-ribboned event. The battle for second place rages on between the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghinis. They weave their way through Maggots and Beckett's for the penultimate time of asking. This, meanwhile, is for position in GT4. Around the outside goes Andrew Gordon Colebrook, and he moves into 6th place in GT4. So he puts the Academy Motorsport Mustang down a position. That was a good move.
That was a very nice move. Don't know if it's completed yet. The Mustang's not giving up without a fight.
Yeah, this is, who's in the Mustang now? It's Will Moore, isn't it? And that was Gordon Colebrook that just went through. They're not that far ahead of our second place battle. I reckon these two might catch the 2 cars we just saw battling away before the end of the race, which is only a lap and a half away now.
Turner still maintaining a 3-second lead.
Yes, he is. Darren Turner, 3.1. Yeah, and once he cleared that traffic, they're pretty much identical in lap time, aren't they, the Aston Martin and the Audi? So barring any late drama there for Turner, he might be able to win, finally, that British GT race on his return to the series.
So while Kodrick's obviously has that penalty hanging over his head, he's still managing to extend his lead.
Yeah, not backed off, really, has he?
No.
Personal bests in the speed traps there as well, both of the speed traps on the track. Right, Mitchell, I still think this is his best opportunity, but he's not quite as close this time into Brooklands as he was a lap ago. Takes the wider line instead, trying maybe to work up to a better exit from Luffield to run down the pit straight, but Lind... This is the thing with Dennis Lind, he doesn't really make mistakes, does he? So if Mitchell's going to do this, he's going to have to force the issue.
He really is. What's interesting going into Brooklands there at the end of that straight is it's very easy, especially when you have the ABS like these cars do, to defend that, because you can turn and brake at the same time. You have to be alongside in a car like this early in the straight to be able to make that work.
Attitude there of Sandy Mitchell's car as it turned through turn 1. Now traffic at Beckett's, not a good place to catch GT4 cars. That's Will Moore in the Ford Mustang, and this surely now is music to the ears of Sandy Mitchell, who closes it on Dennis Lind, who's still getting blocked by the Mustang. Mitchell goes to the outside, to the inside, tries to get the speed off the corner, can't quite get the overlap, but he's right in the slipstream now. This for second place on the final lap of the race. Defensive line by Dennis Lind. They're going to catch the Andrew Gordon Colebrook BMW as well. Lind to the inside, Mitchell in the middle. There's a big squeeze. They almost made contact, just about to avoid each other, right round the outside for Mitchell. Now there is contact on the exit.
Contact.
Oh, he's going to have the inside line down to Club. Is he Mitchell late on the brakes? He has done it. Sandy Mitchell into second place. What a battle that was, and Dennis Lind is now going to try and fight back.
Come on,
Oh my word, Lind. Well, now Lind won't give up on this.
This is not over. No, this is definitely not over.
Brilliant racing, that absolutely fantastic.
A little bit of contact. It'd be hopefully Mitchell stayed within track limits while getting round that corner. It was hard to see, but
good point. Very good point. We'll find out later. Now, up the inside of another map marker, they go into Village for the final time. Would you believe it? This is for second place, but a reminder: the car in the lead will not score points, so that that was really significant potentially for the championship, the Barwell Motorsports 2 cars.
That was. What a move.
Wow, talk about pressure on that move as well. Right, Martin Kodrich, thankfully, appears to have avoided exceeding track limits. He's a bit sideways through Brooklands, but he's only 2 corners from home now. The 2021 Silverstone 500 is going to be won by 2C's Motorsport, having never won a race in the championship before. It's their first time racing the Mercedes. They've dominated the weekend, fastest in qualifying comfortably, and they win the Silverstone 500, round number 2 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Now, who will be second? It should be Sandy Mitchell, I think. Yes, it is. Sandy Mitchell does hang on from Dennis Lind. What a battle between the Barwell teammates.
What a finish. And all smiles in the garage, that's what we like to see. Everyone's friends.
That really reminds me of that Brands Hatch race a couple of years ago when Johnny Cocker, who was in the 69 Barwell Lamborghini at the time, was overtaken by Phil Keane on the last lap at Hawthorne round the outside. A very, very similar situation there, only this time at Stowe at Silverstone. GT4 then, Darren Turner is going to do it. He's going to win his first British GT race, and he's going to do it in style with Matt Topham on his debut in the championship. Matt Topham has dreamt of racing in British GT for years, and he wins on his first attempt. That is such a feel-good story, and they really were pushed hard there, weren't they? That Audi of Senan Fielding and Richard Williams, only 3.3 seconds back at the flag.
That's a great result for Darren. Very happy for him. It was my parting shot today, was, you know, you've never won a British GT race, and he kind of gave me a look, and he's obviously shut me up with that one, so well done to those guys. That's a fabulous way to enter the... Okay.
Dennis Lind... I don't know what his issue would be with Martin Kodrich.
I don't know if he's going to congratulate him and he didn't know he was there. That was... yeah.
Oh dear, that would have been embarrassing, wouldn't it? We might have struggled to get podium interviews from the drivers if they crashed on the in-lap, but yes, that little incident aside, I mean, that is perfection really, isn't it, for 2C's Motorsport? They were the fastest car in both of their qualifying sessions. They really, although there were times where, because maybe Barwell had stuck the pro driver in when 2C's had the AM in, there were times when they lost the lead, but they were never out of the fight. And throughout that entire final stint, really, they never looked likely to lose it unless that track limits thing had come back to bite them.
Yeah, the track limits was the only issue that they had all day. They seemed to have it under control. I honestly thought at one point that the 63 had the pace, that it was going to be out in front, but now the 14 and the 2C's team, it's pretty amazing to be able to come from a different manufacturer, to come from the McLaren, and they were very successful with that, to get the Mercedes and to win straight out of the box. Very impressive.
The top 2 cars in the race, of course, 14 and 1, started first and second on the grid. If you just looked at the grid sheet and the race result, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was a pretty dull race, but absolutely not the case. And then the 63 car that started 8th, had a spin on lap 1, came back to finish almost second, ended up in third. So Martin Kodrich and Hunter Abbott win for 2C's Motorsport with the 2 Barwell, the battling Barwell Lamborghinis behind them. Ballon and Mitchell getting the better of Machitsky and Lind on the very last lap. Charlie Eastwood and Giacomo Petrobelli on their return for TF Sport get 4th, with Yelmer Berman and Ian Loggy in the Ram Mercedes 5th, ahead of Andrew Howard and Johnny Adam in the Beechdean Aston Martin. Then it was the 95 TF Aston Martin in 7th, the 69 Ram Racing Mercedes in 8th, the 66 Team Park Racing Porsche was 9th, and the Proctors in their Balf Motorsport McLaren rounded out the top 10 ahead of winners at Brands Hatch, Phil Keane and Michael Igo. They took maximum points from the season opener. They don't score a single, well, they will inherit a few points, I guess, from this one, but it's going to be a very low points haul indeed. Ewan Hankey and Mia Fluett were next after their lap 1 spin, ahead of Jennings and Caton. GT4 was won by Darren Turner and Matt Topham, with Senan Fielding and Richard Williams in the Audi 2nd. Scott McKenna and John Ferguson were 3rd in the Toyota, ahead of Will Burns and Gus Burton, who led most of the race in the 57 BMW, and Mark Sansom and Charlie Robertson rounding out the top 5. Right then, an awful lot to unpack after an entertaining Silverstone 500, and the leaders are the winners and podium finishers pulling up underneath the Silverstone podium, and hopefully before too long we'll be able to have a chat with them with some real feel-good stories. 2C's with their first victory, the number 1 car bouncing back after a non-finish at Brands Hatch, the 63 car bouncing back after its spin on the opening lap of the race. There are Hunter Abbott and Martin Kodrich, though, the winning moment as they're reunited after the end of the race, and that has got to be such a good feeling. You get out of the car, and the first person you want to see there is the driver that you shared that victory with, right?
It is. You want to celebrate. You've done that together. See the Bahrain flag there? on the wheel well of the car. It's
good looking car as well.
Yeah,
isn't
it's a gorgeous car. I was saying that earlier. I like his helmet too. Nice paint job. Yeah, it's a very pretty car. They're such a well put together team. They haven't been around for very long, but they're just doing so well in all of the races that they do.
The size of the front end of that Mercedes, I mean, it's the size of a small county, isn't it? It's
a lot of engine under there.
An awful lot, and it was put to good use, wasn't it? Yeah, unique. Compare that to the Lamborghini, which is about half the length, isn't it? But the Barwell will be happy with that. They very nearly weren't happy. If they'd have come to blows properly on the last lap, that wouldn't have been a cheery atmosphere in the garage. But second and third at a track that they shouldn't have been on the podium. This was not a good Lamborghini circuit, and yet they got second and third from that race with the number 1 car ahead. Right then, down in amongst all of the action is Bryn Lucas, and I believe he has found our, I'd imagine, very happy race winners.
Wow, how about that, Hunter? Martin, that was phenomenal. You know, you're not supposed to show up like this and win the race, are you?
I mean, we've got a great competition here. We didn't expect to just come up here and, you know, they gave us a hard time in the end in the race, you know, especially Dennis. He had a great pace, and it was just a matter of, you know, keeping the pace up and, you know, keeping the gap. And yeah, so he really pushed me there, and I had to push really hard at the end. So still great competition, but we came up on top, and that's what we came here for.
And Hunter, it all started with your first stint in the car, really, wasn't it? You had to put the times in, but you had to be consistent.
Yeah, so with that, I was just really glad we had a clean start, and the others started fighting between themselves, so I could just kind of get my head down and just focus on hitting the apexes, getting the braking points, just keep on going, until they called me in, which seemed like a long time, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet. Were there any concerns for you at the very end there when you had 5 minutes to go and you had that track limits warning?
Not really. I mean, I was a little surprised with the track limit, because I think I didn't get the information. I think I'd missed the information that I was on the last one, so I had to be more careful in the last couple of laps. But it was not really a problem. I was managing everything. Also, the pace of the car came at the end as well, compared to the Lambo from Barwell and Dennis. So yeah, it was all right. It was all right in the end. Yeah. It wasn't too much pressure. I just wanted to bring it home.
It was pretty good. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congrats now. I'll go and forget the other guys now.
Yeah, pretty good is a decent description of that. A pretty flawless performance, honestly, from 2C's Motorsport, who led from pole position, and they were really never headed. Yes, a circuit that suits the Mercedes pretty well, but they still had to do the job well themselves, didn't they?
They did, and there was other Mercedes out there that weren't today as fast as this car was. They just got everything right. They got the strategy right, the drivers. There's not a mark on it. It's just a perfect day.
So we're going to head back down into the pit lane, who I believe has got our second and third place GT3 finishers.
Well, you know what, Andy? I thought they were so close out on track, you might as well speak to them close together here as well. So, Sandy, let's go to you first of all. What a brilliant, brilliant last stint for you.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell in the garage it was always going to get interesting for that last 20 minutes, half an hour, because everyone was on slightly different strategies, and then it's not till the end of the race you really kind of see where you are. So, yeah, I came out the pits with fresher tyres and low fuel compared to Dennis, who'd obviously jumped us on track position. And yeah, I thought I'd get there, but it was always going to be hard to overtake, and then having a little bit of GT4 traffic just meant I could get that car length closer, and fair play, we left each other just enough room, and thankfully I was able to get the position.
Yeah, and quickly, Adam, watching on, what was that like?
Oh my God, it was so tense. Leo and I had no idea what was going to happen. It was tense hooks, and actually I didn't think he'd get past, because Dennis didn't make any mistakes. It was just the traffic, basically.
Well, let's quickly speak to Dennis and to Leo as well. I mean, it was such a fascinating battle at the end, but Dennis, you did get pipped right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, we had a little bit of a struggle in the beginning of the race, and we were a little bit on the back foot with the strategy, so we were only really playing for track position in my second stint, and that was when we could push, and we knew last stint was going to be a very, very long one, so, tires and fuel was, running to the end, so, it was interesting for sure, but Sandy was just, quicker in the end, and it was just about trying to be quick out of the corners and have the straight line speed, but in the end traffic got us, I think, and he did a brilliant move around the outside. So yeah, it was good racing, and it feels a bit like a 1-2 for the team. So that's the most important.
It's great to see, isn't it, Leo, just how you can have such clean, fast, beautiful racing rather than having to get aggressive all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I had to get aggressive because I went to dead last on lap 1. So I think that feels really good considering the circumstances of a qualifying and then my first lap spin, and then to come back from that to fight it back. Also, we had a 10-second penalty, success penalty from Brands. So to come back and be this close and this competitive, I think, you know, we've definitely got a strong team, a strong lineup, and very good teammates. So very happy.
It was great to watch. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
That move at the end, and you know, it was a terrific battle all the way through, but it wasn't just for second place in the race, this, for Sandy Mitchell. It was worth an extra 10.5 championship points, and in a series that is year after year decided by 2-3 points maximum, could they look back at that last lap at the end of the year and think, yeah, that was the moment we won it?
They certainly could. As you say, every point's a prisoner when it comes to British GT. It was just a great last stint by Sandy Mitchell. He said there, you know, he had the fresh tyres, he had the less fuel on board, but he still just harried Lind so hard.
In GT4, things were just as frenetic, and it was another real feel-good story with Darren Turner and Matt Topham on their debut taking the victory.
Yeah, exactly. Their debut with a new team in the championships as well. But Darren and Matt, brilliant race. Darren, it's phenomenal what you do in a car.
Well, no, I mean, the car, the team and everything, they've done a great job with the preparation. We had a test here a couple of weeks ago. On Friday it went well. Just getting up to speed with the GT4, and to be fair, Matt's been amazing over the test days, and his pace in the race has been fantastic. So really pleased that we've ended up on the top step of the podium. It's a nice way to start, missing Brands, but now at least got some decent points here. But yeah, great effort by everyone at the team.
And Matt, before this we were talking about the fact that you'd had a dream to race in British GT, and now look, first race.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Might as well retire, yeah?
We're not finished yet. There's plenty more to come yet, but just getting more and more comfortable in the car, lap by lap, test by test. It's great. What a dream.
You seem a bit emotional. Look, well done.
Just a little bit.
So a victory for the team that weren't able to race with us at Brands Hatch last time out, but as we said during the race there, Marino, even though they missed the first race, they could, if they keep that performance up, certainly still be in the conversation for the championship when we get to Donington at the end of the year.
Absolutely. With performances like that, no doubt. And it was interesting. You could see it took a little bit to settle down at the beginning of the race. Once Darren was in the car, the second half of the first stint, once Darren got into the car, they're great. They're great. They're a great team.
Yeah.
You can see, and as the experience builds up for the team and the drivers, they're going to go from strength to strength. It's a great way to start. I do like the way the car looks as well. I think it's quite a cool paint job.
Yeah, it does look rather good, doesn't it? And yeah, Matt Topham's got a good tutor there, hasn't he, in Darren Turner, who does know a thing or two about GT racing. Right then, the rather complicated process of handing all of the trophies out begins. We start with the overall GT3 podium then. Third place goes the way of Dennis Lind and Leo Machitsky, with Sandy Mitchell and Adam Ballon coming home in second place. What a big move that could have been. They score first place points, remember. The race win, though, goes to 2Cs Motorsport. Martin Kodrich brought it home. Hunter Abbott put in some good stints earlier on. That is, by the way, I'm reliably told, the first race-by-race entry to win a race since 2015. The Von Ryan Racing team were victorious. I would love to pretend that I knew that, but as ever, thanks to Tom Hornsby for the useful stats. Great victory for 2Cs Motorsport, though. And the Mercedes, the team will, of course, also hold the RAC trophy. And a trophy is a trophy is a trophy, but when there's a special trophy like that, you know, like the Harley J. Earl trophy over in America, for example, it just means that little bit more, doesn't it? And the RAC trophy in particular, Marino, such an iconic name within British motorsport.
Absolutely. It's one of those ones that you want on your CV. And here comes the champagne. Just what you want after a warm afternoon in a car. It's funny, it tastes really nice. Doesn't smell great afterwards, but it tastes very nice.
And stings a little when it gets in your eye, so I'm told.
Yep.
Not something I've experienced myself, I must say, but good to see good camaraderie all round, including between the Barwell teammates there. It would be easy for them to particularly for the 63 crew, to be a little bit miffed at the way that race ended. But when it's a good, clean, fair battle like that, you really can't actually hold a grudge against the guys that beat you.
No, it's good to see. That's what you want in a team. Hard but fair racing and respect between the crews. It was really nice to see that.
There was a horrifying moment where they made contact and
bit of carbon flew off. Yeah,
I really did panic, because even if they don't spin, you know, you think about punctures, bent steering, all these things that could go wrong, but thankfully wasn't the case. Right, we move on to the Silver Am podium, I believe now, within GT3. So drivers making their way up. It is the Proctors first, Stuart and Lewis Proctor, who seemed to get themselves involved in an awful lot of battles, despite not necessarily being on the lead lap, pushing hard towards the end. Then Sam Dehaan and James Cottingham, who had a slightly quieter race this time, although at least Sam got a drive in this one. He didn't get to go in the car at all during the race in the Brands Hatch season opener, and of course only with 2 entrants in the Silver Am class. Third technically went to the Nearies, but I don't know if they actually completed enough laps to be registered as third, so they don't appear on the podium, that's for sure. So it's Dehaan and Cottingham for Ram Racing who get themselves the Silver Am victory, although I must confess I thought that maybe Ram Racing might be able to challenge for overall honours, given how strong the Mercedes are in general. I did wonder whether maybe they'd be able to get up there and challenge for the race victory. GT4 overall then podium now begins, and top 3 drivers in the top 3 teams, I should say, in the very competitive GT4 field. There you can see Stellar Motorsport, the Audi. That Audi is a good car. It goes well at all of the circuits, it seems. So they're going to be championship contenders for sure, as I suspect will Matt Topham and Darren Turner. And Darren, he's won a lot of races in his career. He's won even more prestigious races than this, but this will mean something as a British driver, especially. You know, this is the pinnacle of this form of racing in this country. It's the crown jewel event of the season. Yeah, this is one Darren will remember.
He'll be very happy with that. He's got the family here today.
Oh,
he
nice.
lives very close by, so yeah, that's a good one for him. Keep him smiling.
Yes, he was filling me in yesterday about how driving a GT car was infinitely less complicated than emptying the toilet on his motorhome. So he's living the family dream this weekend, is Darren Turner, camping with the family and loving every second of it, so he tells me. So the final podium will be the GT4 Pro-Am top 3. And, well, they were robbed of a victory at Brands Hatch, but it will be another class podium, at least, for Assetto Motorsports, Mark Sansom and Charlie Robertson. This was never going to be the best circuit for the Ginetta, I think, so they'll be quite happy with the points that they've managed to bag. John Ferguson and Scott McKenna back on the podium again. They were on there for the overall GT4 podium. They're also second in Pro-Am. And it's that bloke again, Darren Turner and Matt Topham, with another pair of trophies then to add to their respective cabinets as the winners in the GT4 Pro-Am category. And that was a great battle within the battle. We didn't get a lot of time to talk about the sort of Pro-Am battle within GT4, but it's nice to see actually that the Pro-Am teams are able to compete with the Silver Cup entries, because a couple of years ago that wasn't really the case. Silver Cup entries were winning every race in GT4, but now, yeah, it's a lot more even.
Again, like the balance of performance of the cars, the extra time they have to spend in the pits means that these guys can come along and not just compete in their class, but compete for the overall victories and podiums, which is really nice.
Well, it really works, doesn't it? Because the 27 Aston Martin that won GT4 overall finished 3.3 seconds ahead of the Audi. That's a Pro-Am ahead of a Silver Cup. Neither of them had success penalties, so they came within 3 seconds of absolutely nailing that handicap system, and yeah, really, really worked well. Everything went quite well actually today. It's been a fantastic race here at Silverstone. The Silverstone 500 never fails to entertain, and the 2021 edition was absolutely no exception. Let's take a look back, shall we then, at the highlights of what was another thrilling edition of the race. Well, at the start of the race, it was the 14 Mercedes on pole position with the number 1 Lamborghini alongside, and that would kind of be the story at the end of the race, but an awful lot happened in the meantime. Lots of the early action was centred around the other Barwell car, number 63, with Leo Bachitsky at the wheel, who halfway around the first lap had a huge spin, which could so easily have ended in retirement for the car. The car rotated 2.5, nearly 3 full times, and he rejoined right at the back of the GT3 field. The Academy Ford Mustang was moving forward. from the back of the GT4 grid, whilst Richard Neary put in one of the best stints we've seen from him, carving his way through the GT3 pack. Sadly, Brendan Arib was out from second place early on after contact with the GT4 Mercedes, whilst there was an issue of another kind for John Ferguson in the Toyota as his wing mirror came loose. Battling on the track, then turned into action in the pit lane. Richard Neary in to hand over to his son Sam, who sadly wouldn't get a huge amount of time in the car because only a couple of laps later, the youngster was looking dejected in the garage after a gearbox issue put them out of the race. At the head of the field, after the first round of pit stops, the 63 Barwell Lamborghini of Dennis Lynn moved into the race lead on track ahead of the 14 car. Not a position, though, that they would hang on to till the flag, whilst there was contact between Marcus Clutton and Johnny Adam as they went through the loop. That damaged the right front corner of the McLaren. They were out of the race, but Adam, thankfully, was able to continue. In GT4, Matt Topham first stint, and Darren Turner was able to take over. That car was always up there in the top 3 positions or so. So too was the Audi, which pitted twice very early on in the race, so they weren't necessarily running right at the front of the GT4 field, but we knew they'd be up there by the end of the race. Into the middle part of the 3 hours of racing we went, and unfortunately, heartbreak for the Paddock Motorsport Bentley that looked like it might be a contender for a podium. They retired with an engine issue out on track, whilst in GT4, the front runners had to dodge some of the GT3 cars. The battle at the end was all about second place. The 2 Barwell Motorsport Lamborghinis went wheel to wheel on the last lap, with Sandy Mitchell moving into second. But the race victory in the Silverstone 500 went the way of 2C's Motorsport, with Martin Kodrich and Hunter Abbott winning at the Silverstone 500.